Good morning. This is a public hearing of the Chatham Conservation Commission being held on Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021, in accordance with the provisions of the Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Chatham Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Chapter 272. It's being broadcast live on Channel 18, recorded for the archives, and it's being conducted today by video conference, pursuant to the newly enacted Act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This new act, signed into law by the governor, includes an extension until April 1st, 2022, allowing public bodies to continue to hold remote hearings live with adequate alternative means of public access. Every effort's been made to assure the public can access this hearing and participate. The agenda and copies of all documents for review today have been posted on the town website. So ask all participants except for commission members to please mute yourselves now and remain muted unless you are speaking. If you're on the phone, you just mute by pressing *6 and press *6 again to unmute when you wish to speak. For the commission members, as we've been doing lately, we'll be using the raise hand function if you're on the platform. So when we move into the questions and comments, please hit the raise hand button and speak up. If you are on the phone, just speak up and indicate that you have a question or a comment. Once comments and questions have been made from members of the commission, then we will recognize participants who wish to speak. Same protocol, use the raise hand button if you're on the platform and speak up and let us know if you are on the phone. And so to establish a quorum today, I'll ask each commission member to indicate their presence by stating their name. Commissioner Rawls.
Rawls present.
Commissioner Delvecchio is not here yet. Commissioner Kitts.
Kitts present.
Commissioner Clark.
Clark present.
Commissioner Latin.
Latin present.
Commissioner Francisconi.
Francisconi present.
Commissioner, where am I? Sullivan. Terry Sullivan.
Terry Sullivan present.
And Commissioner Mary Sullivan.
Present.
Okay, and I'm Janet Williams. I am here and opening this hearing at 9:03 a.m. So, Nikki, I guess we're ready to start with the top of the agenda.
All right, we have a request for determination of applicability for 0 Northgate Road, Lot 2, Robert Colucci, map 11I, parcel 14G2. Proposed house, septic, driveway, utilities, and associated site improvements.
Okay, so we've received revised plans. If we can have those up, Nikki, we can look at them. And good morning, Brad. I see you're here.
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Brad Malo from Coastal Engineering. As you mentioned, we, as a result of the last hearing, we made some plan revisions to address the comments raised by the Commission. Go over the 4 items that we modified. There was a work limit line that was added to the drawing, and that's being traced right now. Along that particular line, we've also added a sedimentation barrier, which consists of straw wattles. So everything to the left of that line, to the street side of that line, is to remain as it is today. There's no proposed activities, no tree cutting, anything to the left of that particular line. Also, to the top side of the driveway, we've also denoted a work limit line, and that is a dashed line that comes from the street and then down and back up toward the property line in that area. As I previously stated, the sedimentation barrier is proposed along that work limit line that was to the bottom side of the driveway. We had previously discussed the driveway surfacing. This gets a little bit steep as you run from Northgate Road up to the proposed house site. And so we have proposed a paved driveway in this area. And in response to the commission's concerns, we've added a catch basin and recharge basin consisting of Cultec unit down near the edge of the road to pick up any of the surface runoff from the paved driveway and infiltrate that into the ground prior to it entering Northgate Road. The final item is in compensation for the tree removal that is necessary for the driveway installation and the septic system installation. We've added 3 areas delineating proposed native plantings. They're labeled A, B, and C. And within those areas, we're proposing a blend of native species that include viburnum, holly, high leaf hydrangea, and mountain laurel. We're open to staff recommendations as well if there's some other species that would be preferred, but those being native species and being to the, let's say, to the resource area side of the project location, we thought that would be the best location to propose these compensatory or compensation plantings, if you will. Those were the changes, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to attempt to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to clarify, because I think my notes aren't entirely clear, and I apologize if this was clear at the last time. But what is the current total count of the trees in the jurisdictional area that are proposed for removal?
We had a count of 11, Madam Chair.
And that's a mix of
But
6 to 8 pines I have, and a number of oaks.
that's correct. Yes.
How many oaks, or
Uh,
if it's 8?
that was last week's note. I would concur.
But I have different things written down. I just need to be able to, we need to be able to make a finding in terms of the specific number of trees coming out so that we can balance what's being proposed for replacement.
The number 12 was in compensation for 11 trees that were proposed to come out, which were a blend of oaks and pines.
Okay. And so looking at the proposed replacements, so is high leaf hydrangea a native?
Out of the Conservation Service list, yes, it is.
Okay, did that come from the county cooperative extension list?
That's right, yes.
Okay. I know there are some that are natives. I just hadn't heard of that one. Okay. And all of these are shrubs, correct? 2-gallon pots?
Yes. Yeah, I'm not a plant expert. They're native species. I'll buy that they're shrubs. I apologize. I'm not prepared to speak to actually that. When we were putting this together, it was, we did go through the list. So they're either shrubs or in the tree variety. I'm not certain of that.
Okay. I know that hollies sometimes can be classified as trees and sometimes as shrubs, but I think the mountain laurel and the viburnum and the hydrangea are all shrubs. Okay. That's all I have for the moment. Let me see who has a question. Karen, you have your hand up. You're muted, Karen. You're muted.
When I was over walking the property, the trees to be removed haven't been marked. So is there a way that we could get that marked?
Sure, we could do that.
It would just help with visualizing what is being taken out. There's so many trees on that property.
Well, that's really the point. There's trees that would have to come out wherever the driveway would be located, and we're trying to confine this as much as possible. So the driveway was staked, and my count's reliant on what we had staked on the ground, and what's in proximity to that corridor.
Okay. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments from other commission members? Bob Rawls.
I don't actually have any questions. It still strikes me that this is not an appropriate submission to deal with under an RDA, or a request for determination of applicability is supposed to be an up or down vote on whether something impacts the resource area. This clearly does. Even though there's nothing in the written materials that says how many trees are coming out, we now know that there are 11 plus or minus mature trees. I know they're mature because we are there on site. Compensation that's being offered are shrubs, in my view. So it should not have been submitted, in my view, as an RDA. It should be an NOI. We need to be able to track. We need to be able to analyze this in a more detail. We need to be able to track the mitigation and make sure that the mitigation is adequate to the impact on the resource area. So that is what I have to say about that.
Okay, thank you. Other commissioners?
I agree with Commissioner Rawls.
Okay, Tom, thank you. Terry, you have your hand up?
I'm new, so I'm not exactly sure what an RDA and an NOI are, but I just want to know what does Nicole, the health agent, feel about this?
Being that all work is located out of the 100-foot buffer, this is just riverfront. It's a undeveloped lot, which can be tricky because it's hard to do mitigation on an undeveloped lot. But they did work hard to get everything out of the 100-foot buffer. It's just riverfront. Like Brad stated, no matter where they put the driveway, garage, or wherever they put the driveway, some trees will have to be removed. They've kept the garage and bed and dwelling out of the 200-foot as well. They tried to keep the septic as far away from our jurisdiction as possible as well. So considering all of that, I recommend that we approve it, which would be a -3, which means that work is in our jurisdiction, but will not have overall adverse effect on the resource area. And then I don't think it was mentioned, but they did keep the drive pervious, but they added a drain. I can't remember if Brad mentioned that or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they did their best to limit the impact on the resource area. So that's why, and I will admit that I recommended that Brad file for an RDA because I thought just the small section of driveway here is really all we're talking about. And they've done their best to minimize the impacts.
Okay.
Any other questions? Terry, go ahead.
My thinking is that we've got our hands full with a whole bunch of different stuff, and should probably go with what our representative, the health agent, believes is appropriate. But I'm new, so.
No, well, no, an RDA simply is a shorter process than going through a whole notice of intent with a order of conditions at the end. And it requires that we be able to make a finding that the proposed activity has little or no impact on the resource area. So as Bob said, it's an up or down vote. We either say it does or it doesn't. And if we find that it does have an impact, then the applicant would have to go back and submit a full NOI to get an order of conditions to allow it. I have to admit, this is a close call. I can see why Nikki advised them to go the RDA route when you first look at it. But as we have drilled down into it over the last couple of weeks and tallied up the number of trees and looked at, now there's mitigation and there's no trees proposed in the mitigation. And I think that may be partly because the lot is so heavily wooded already, trying to fit decent sized trees into that area would be difficult. That said, normally when there's mitigation, there's a survivability requirement that we put into our orders. So I think that's why at least some commission members, and I'm sort of on the fence about it, have leaned more toward it should have been done as an NOI. Had we known this in the beginning, that we'd be dealing with mitigation for the loss of the trees.
I
But-
do want to just point out there is a roadway and other houses between this project and the resource area. So
Yep.
again, I
Exactly.
don't think it has any more impact than is already existing.
That's exactly where I was going. At the end of the day, I look at the resource area, which in this case is a riverfront. It's the small stream that runs behind the house across the paved roadway. And given that, I guess I come down on the side of a negative determination under these particular circumstances. Anyway, well, does somebody want to make a motion one way or the other, and we can have a vote and see where it comes out?
Mrs. Kitts, move to make a negative determination.
And what's the appropriate number? Is it a -3?
Negative.
Nikki?
Three, yes, negative.
Actually, it would be a -2 because it's in riverfront, which is a resource area.
All
Okay,
right,
negative two.
-2.
Thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
Clark, second.
All right, roll call vote for a -2 determination for 0 North Gate. Commissioner Rawls.
I'll vote no.
Okay, Delvecchio is not here. Commissioner Kitts,
Aye,
Clark,
No.
Latin,
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
I vote aye. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4, 2, 0. So it squeaks through. All right. Thank you, Brad.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners.
Nicole will
Thank
help you and guide you in terms of the final selection of those plants, the mitigation, and she'll help you make sure that they get in properly and to the extent we can oversee that process.
Great. Thank you
All
very
right, thank-
much. Bye.
thank you.
All right, Nikki, moving on.
22 Diane Drive. Again, this is a request for determination for Jason and Lori Fromer, map 60, parcel 60/G118. This is a second floor addition and modifications to the basement and mechanicals, I believe.
Good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, thank you. For the record, Thad Eldridge with East Southeast here representing the Fromers. I'll keep this one brief because it can be. The only real work that's being done outside that's going to impact the ground is elevating an air conditioning unit that's within a floodplain so that it meets the base flood elevation requirements. They'll be doing work within the building footprint, raising the second floor to add additional living space. They will be modifying the basement to have flood vents to comply with FEMA. We will be utilizing, or the builder will be utilizing the shell driveway and the paved driveway for dumpster and parking. And he has a plan to bug out if there's a storm forecast. Otherwise, if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Thad. So what, I'm a little, I don't understand exactly what's happening with the basement, with the foundation. It's not being, the house is not being raised up. So just the flood vents are being installed?
So the first floor already meets the base flood elevation requirement. They would have to be at elevation 12. The first floor is at 15.9. All they have to do is cut holes in the foundation, put in some flood vents, and it complies.
Okay.
Additionally, internally, they have to raise all of the mechanicals in the basement, but that's certainly not part of this filing because that's part of the building permit.
Right.
So it's an easy conversion to become flood compliant, relatively speaking.
Okay, got it. And what is the air conditioning unit being placed on? Is it a?
That's going to be a decking with pile supports. So we'll have a couple of precast concrete piles going in. It's a day's worth of work to dig them in, put them in. We didn't consider that erosion control was necessary because it would be such a small area.
Okay. Questions from commissioners? Any comments?
I have no comments either. Thad, pretty much stated the work and that it's, not going to have an impact on the flood zone, just going to be an improvement. So with that, I would recommend a -2. That work is in a resource area, just the flood zone, but will not have a negative impact.
Okay. I have no questions or comments. Is there a motion then for a -2 determination?
Move for a -2 determination for the RDA.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote for the RDA for 22 Diane Drive. Commissioner Rawls,
Aye.
Pitts,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Latin,
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
I vote aye, so that's 1, 2, 3, unanimous. Can't even count today. 1, 2, 3,
Fair enough.
6.
Thank you much. Have a great day.
0. All right, thank you very much, Dad. All right, Nikki, moving on.
The next one is a request for a change in plan for 125 Stage Harbor Road, Golden Orchard Properties LLC, map 14D, parcel D11. The original filing was in addition to the dwelling, pool pathway repairs, and this new change is to change the location of the water line. I just want to briefly state that our jurisdiction is environmental related. We do not want to discuss property bound easement issues. We will hear the abutters speak. Everyone will get their chance if they wish, but please try to remember that our jurisdiction is environmental related. There was a new plan submitted just about an hour ago that shows a slightly different location of the water line to accommodate an abutter's concerns about a future pool that he was interested in possibly having. So that is up now. I believe the locations of the holes, this one's the same. This one might be a little shifted. I'm not sure, but Dave Clark can speak to that.
Okay.
Good evening,
You-
David Clark.
Can you zoom in a little bit, Nikki, on the water line so we can
Sure.
see it? Thank you. Okay, sorry about that, David.
That's right. David Clark and Clark Engineering on behalf of Golden Orchard Properties LLC. This project is underway, as you know. What has occurred out there is when construction started on the pool, they had to relocate the water line. So they cut the water service and proceeded with construction. When they went back to the water department to reattach the water service, they were informed at that time that the water service is extremely old. It's a steel line put in the early 1950s or so, and they requested that the entire water service be replaced. So the contractor was putting in underground utilities out to Stage Harbor Road, and at that time they thought that they could simply put the water service in out to Stage Harbor Road, and that required a plan. And obviously a water service cannot be put inside the same trench as a electric service, so that portion of the project was completed. That allowed us time to look at how to get this accomplished. So the 125 has an easement across 2 properties for utilities, and the easement simply states that they have a right to replace, repair, or relocate the utilities. Right now, the water line goes from the house at 125 down a driveway out to Cross Street. That's where the existing water service is. So that's where the existing easement is. And so the idea is to replace it at approximately the same location as it is now. And to avoid disruption and trenching within that stretch, we're proposing 3 excavations so that limit the amount of excavation. And we'll be molding in between those excavation holes and pulling the pipe underground so that we don't disturb any of the existing vegetation. We understand that both sides of the driveway coming in off of Cross Street is heavily vegetated, and we believe we placed the excavation holes in locations that won't disturb any of that vegetation. Obviously, the mowing process won't disturb any of the vegetation. The water service is required to be a minimum of 4 feet below grade, so we'll be going under the remaining portions of the vegetation. On the 125 property itself, we will be doing some additional trenching, but that will be backfilled within a day of installation. We did look at going out to Stage Harbor Road. Obviously, there really are no obstructions between 125 and Stage Harbor Road at all. It's simply lawn. But the fundamental problem with going out to Stage Harbor Road is that the water main is located on the west side of Stage Harbor Road underneath the sidewalk. For those of you who've traveled Stage Harbor Road, you know that sidewalk is right there at the top of the bank to the oyster pond. The sidewalk is only 4 feet wide. We need to excavate a hole a little bit bigger than that. So that means that in order to tap the main in that location, we're probably going to have to close down Stage Harbor Road. The curb has to come out, the sidewalk has to come out, a portion of the guardrail might have to come out, and we have to excavate on the bank in order to tap the main. From there, we would mow under the street and onto the abutting property and do another excavation there, and then trench up to the house. At the end of the day, I don't think the costs are considerably different in that we would have to restore the driveway out to Cross Street if we dug there. But the fundamental issue are the environmental issues of digging on the top of the bank, and then the public issue of closing down Stage Harbor Road in the summertime. And again, the reason for the slight change in the water line location was I spoke to the Lynches, which are the direct abutters that front on Cross Street. We had it going through a portion of their yard where they're planning some improvements to the property, and the water service would impact that. And that's it.
All right, thank you, David. So, okay, from our perspective, I think this is a proposed plan change, and what we are, as Nicole said, what we're looking at are the impacts to the resource area. And the resource areas are the wetlands to the north and northwest of the property, and the coastal bank to the south of the property. You said that David, you said that the hole would what is the diameter of the hole? I know it's 4 feet deep, but did you just say it was about 4 feet wide or more than 4 feet wide?
It's between 4 and 6 feet. Whatever the soil conditions allow. Certainly, if it's clean coarse sand and given the drought situation, the top of the hole might be 6 feet wide. It's just to meet OSHA requirements for safe entry into the hole.
Okay, okay, okay. So 6 feet. So if you went the route down to Stage Harbor, you'd have to go under Stage Harbor and then connect to, I suppose, an existing line that's over by under the coastal bank and excavate there.
Yeah, the 8-inch water main is under the sidewalk right there at the top of the bank.
That's where.
I think, like I said, if you've traveled that area, you know the guardrail is right there at the top of is at the top of the bank, and the sidewalk is immediately adjacent to the guardrail. So
Yeah.
there's not a lot of room there to work. And given that there's no place to set up equipment on the bank to dig, the equipment really has to be set up in the road. So we might be able to keep one lane open, but because we don't have any leeway on the coastal bank side for equipment, we might have to close 2 lanes.
Okay. So this proposed process, molding as you referred to it, and this, if you went the other way out to Cross Street, you would excavate the 3 holes that are shown on the plan, roughly the same size, 4 feet deep, 4 to 6 feet in diameter, and then you insert the water line, take it from one hole to the next until it gets to the connection point. Is that right?
Yeah, so the mole is just a pneumatic device. So there'll be a compressor there, and it basically pushes its way in the direction you initially point it, and then once it's through the other side, you attach the water pipe and you pull it back through the hole, or the boring, so to speak, that it created between the holes. That eliminates the trenching in between the holes.
Okay. So in this location, what is the effect of and we'll read the abutters letters, but the one thing that struck me right away from them is that this driveway is crushed stone over top of paved asphalt.
Yep.
So how does that complicate the process in terms of excavating through that?
So we'd cut a hole in the asphalt, remove the pavement, and then do the excavation. And then when the connections are made, we would fill the hole in 1 foot increments, compacting it, and then place new asphalt, and put the decorative surface back on top.
Okay, so everything that comes out will go back in. So there are concerns about subsidence that were raised about excavating in this location.
But because it's in a driveway, we would follow the DPW's guidelines for work within the road, so that they require compaction, in increments to avoid settling.
And with respect to the vegetation, now there's an issue about the easement and the location of this line. The easement is not shown on this plan, nor is it necessary to do that. Other than we observe that any proponent, any applicant must have a legal right to do the work where they're proposing to do it. And if it's on an abutter's property, we presume and we require that there's a legal right to do so.
Matthew?
Is this proposed line within the existing easement area?
The easement language is quite simple. It just says 125 has a right to maintain, replace, or repair utilities on lot 6 and lot 10. So lot 6 and 10 are the 2 butters that we're going over. There's no defined location of the easement. That's why it's not shown on the plan. And so it's simply over the lots, and presumably the easement technically is where the water line is now. When an easement is not described by meets and bounds, it defaults to the actual location of that particular utility, becomes the easement.
Okay. A reminder to everybody to please mute if you're not speaking. We're getting some background noise here that's distracting. Okay, let me open it up to other questions from commission members first. Bob Rawls, go ahead.
Yes, David, there were in the abutter letter, commentary letters, there were concerns raised about potential impact of your drilling on adjacent large mature trees. I'm just wondering, since we haven't, this is on the abutter's property, this was not something I think any of the commissioners have gone to see with their own eyes. So can you talk about whether, what is your position on that
Yeah,
complaint?
because of the vegetation, it's along with the existing driveway being paved, that's why we chose to mow it. I've never experienced the mowing operation ever impacting trees. In fact, we did a sewer connection on Cedar Street that was directional drilled almost 700 feet under existing vegetation, and there was no impact to the vegetation. So I don't feel there will be any impacts to the vegetation because of this activity.
So you do have 6-foot wide holes, 3 of them.
Yeah.
But those would be contained within the existing driveway?
Yes, and when the time comes to do this, obviously the excavation contractor, if they feel that moving the hole slightly 3 or 4 feet in one direction or the other is advantageous to protect vegetation, they'll do that.
Okay. Yeah, that's really, I guess, that's the only issue that I think fits squarely within our jurisdiction. So I have no more questions for the moment.
All right, thank you. Karen.
My only question is, they brought up that the trench was dug for 125 going down to Stage Harbor, and why is this now changed to go to Cross? Is there a way, what was the reasoning behind not doing it to Stage Harbor, where some of the letters said, the trench was dug and the water could have gone in there somehow?
We're not allowed to put the water service in the same trench as the electrical service. So that's one reason.
Okay.
And then the other issue is what I stated about the existing water main on Stage Harbor being under the sidewalk at the top of the bank. So we're looking at impacts to resource areas. Direct impact is to resource areas.
All right. Thank you.
Other commission members, questions or comments? Okay, Nikki, do you want to then read into the record we need to read them, or because they're lengthy? Or do you
I
want
was just about to ask. They are
summarize them?
somewhat lengthy. I believe, so I spoke with Elaine Gibbs and Arlene Lynch and Matthew. I did not get his last name. He's the abutter that was concerned about his impact for a future pool. So I think his concerns have been considered by David Clark and modified on the plan. I don't know if the abutters want to speak briefly, or I mean they're both 3-page letters, so I don't feel
we've all read them.
The entire thing. They will be in the record.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to see them can see them at any time. Their concern, I know Arlene's main concern was time of year. What she said she was going to have guests and renters throughout the summer, and she wanted to know when the work might be done. She requested a time of year restriction, but without it impacting, we do time of year restrictions when it's mating season and things like that. And this is not the case.
But let's just ask David quickly. David, what is the plan for the timing of this?
Right now, the the property is served by a over-the-ground connection courtesy of a butter. That water service is not potable because it lies on the surface, so there's no way to ensure safe drinking water. So the owners want to get this done ASAP so they can use their house. And so I did speak to Matt. Matt Lynch is Mrs. Lynch's son. So I spoke to him this morning. He asked that if we could put it off till the beginning of the third week of July, which is, let's see, the week of the 14th. But anyways, they asked for about a 2-week delay, and I haven't discussed that with the owners yet. But obviously, because they don't have a source of drinking water at the moment, they want to get this done ASAP.
And how long will the impact last?
In my narrative, I said 4 hours. That's 4 hours per hole. So the contractor is now estimating about a day and a half to do all the work. But Tom Temple has asked for work protocol on closure of the driveway so that he has documentation that the contractor will do his due diligence to have that timeline as short as possible.
Okay. All right. With that, I see that Elaine Gibbs has her hand up. I'll recognize her now with, please try to limit your comments to the matters that the Conservation Commission can address. Many of the items in the letter we don't have any authority over. So go ahead, Ms. Gibbs.
Yes, Elaine Gibbs. I'm the owner of 150, 152, and 154 Cross Street. First of all, I want to say no one has called me and talked to me about this. And the reason for the lateness of my letter is because I just happened to see today's meeting on the town calendar on Friday. Neither Arlene Lynch or I received notification of this meeting. We are not only direct abutters, but it is our shared driveway that's proposed to be excavated and the only subject of this request for change. I strongly disagree with the engineer's opinion that this is merely a field change order, let alone a minor one. Field changes are changes that are made within the scope of the original plan. The site plan before this commission on September 23rd showed water service coming in from the owner's driveway. There was never any discussion of any work on 148 or 152 Cross, and the Cross Street driveway easement was not even shown on the original plan. I don't know how they could not have known 9 months ago where the water comes into the house, because all indications were it was coming in from the owner's driveway. This isn't a change, it's an addition outside the scope of the original plan and the property that was before conservation last fall, and it is not minor. We should have received notice, and whether or not legally required, it should be common courtesy that we be notified when it is our properties and our landscaping that are the only subject of this change. We could have awoken one morning to our properties being torn up. You provided new information today, including a new map today, which I have not even been able to absorb. I don't believe any commissioners or conservation agent have visited our property to see the potential environmental impact and invasiveness of this proposal. It cannot be seen from 125 Stage Harbor because of fencing, and commissioners have historically taken the butter concerns into account when there are viable alternatives. And there is a more viable alternative. As background, in 48, the Henry House estate was comprised of the main house, which is my home, the carriage house at 125 and the gate house. Services came in there from Cross Street. Over the years, both gas and sewer for the owner's properties were installed from Stage Harbor. It's still unclear where the sewer is coming in, but I believe it's up my front yard or along the boundary. Mr. Hoppel, the building contractor, approached me in March regarding DPW's unwillingness to approve water service from Cross Street because of the age of the 70-year-old pipes and recently completed extensive work on Cross Street that he did not want disturbed. Mr. Hoppel said services would have to come up my front lawn at my property line from Stage Harbor. Despite no utility easement at that location, I said I would agree, but only if all services were brought in from there, including water, as I did not want utilities in 2 different locations on my property or 2 excavations. He agreed, saying that was the owner's wish. I happened to be home in April when one of Mr. Hoppel's contractors came to my door saying they were going to lay electrical. That day, I told him the same thing. I would agree only if all services, including water, would be brought in there. He went back to Mr. Hoppel, came back a few minutes later saying Mr. Hoppel had confirmed to him that all services, including water, would come in from Stage Harbor. That was the agreement that I made in good faith. When they began excavating the trench along the road, I was shocked at the size, extensive, invasiveness of the excavation for just electrical conduit. I went down to the site and asked Mr. Hoppel if he'd gone before conservation for approval, as a significant portion of the 150-foot trench was within the no disturb zone within 50 feet of Oyster Pond and the 100-foot buffer. The roots of my shrubs along the road were all exposed from the bulldozer with absolutely no mitigation measures.
I'm
taken.
sorry, can we stick to the current proposal, not what happened in the past,
Well,
please?
it is
Environmental concerns only.
It
This
is
is a very long meeting. We have hours and hours of discussion for other hearings, and we need to stick to pertinent issues.
This is pertinent because it was the agreement that was had with the owners. And
It's a verbal agreement that does not involve Conservation Commission. It's easements and property lines, and we do not discuss those at Conservation Commission meetings. I'm sorry,
Smith,
this is a 3-page
Ms.
letter.
Smith.
We do not need the whole thing read into
Ms.
the
Smith.
record.
Historically, abutters have been able to make their statements and then you determine what is or is not within your purview. I only learned of this on Friday. All the offices were closed. I didn't even get this map until Monday from you because it was not put in the packet. And I have every right. This is going to impact my property values, my life, and I have a right to make my statement and then you can make your judgments. And I'm sorry you have a heavy calendar, but if I had known about this a long time ago, maybe we could have resolved a lot of issues beforehand. He told me his job was not to go before conservation, and I told him that as representative of the owner, it was his responsibility to make sure all approvals were received. This was confirmed by the email from the building inspector. I asked he stop work until it could be sorted out. Approval was received by conservation and water service could be installed at the same time. At no time did he ever tell me that electrical could not be run with water. My son was present for these. All of this is confirmed in contemporaneous emails with DPW and the building inspector. I have received no communications from anyone on the project since, although they have continued to lay Comcast and Verizon wires. In terms of the environmental impact, our driveway is asphalt, and this is new news because nowhere does it say in his letter, which is the only official document, that asphalt will be laid. The asphalt is original to the house. Excavation will require its removal with 3 4-foot holes. There is no mention in his letter of the width, but we're being told that it's going to be 5 to 6 feet. While not mentioned in the request, the plan also shows a 5-foot deep by 6-foot wide mole recovery excavation at the entrance to the 148 Cross Street parking area adjacent to the 100-year-old beech tree. The field change letter stated it's only going to take 4 hours. He's now saying a day and a half, and I cannot believe that's going to be the case. This is a massive project. He cannot predict what problems they are going to encounter with 70-plus-year-old underground utilities and other infrastructure from 1948 because there are no records and no work has ever been done on them in almost 40 years I have lived here. This project was supposed to be completed by May 15, and there is no end in sight. To just now come up with this solution 9 months after coming before this board at the beginning of the summer when it will cause tremendous disruption for my family, guests, workmen, landscapers, and in the event of an emergency is wrong and unnecessary. The ZVA would not even permit exterior construction work between May 31st and Labor Day as a condition of approval. And that should be your position as well. Because of the removal of the pavement with weekly heavy trucks coming through, I am very concerned that I will have sinkholes unless this is done really, really well. To just pour pavement over the top without clearing the driveway and making sure these 4 holes are filled, I don't believe is going to be a remedy. The potential damage and cleanup will be significant. After confirmed by both the contractor and Tom Temple that water would be brought in from Stage Harbor, I had 20 tons of bluestone laid. Based on the quality of the seating of the trench on Stage Harbor, I have serious reservations what condition this my driveway is going to be left in. And I disagree with the engineer's assessment that there will not be any damage to the landscaping. None of the impacted trees are shown on this new site plan. I have two 70-plus-year-old Japanese maples original to the property within the 100-foot buffer zone where the pipe will go directly through their root systems. These root systems are deep. The root system of the 100-foot, likely 100-year-old beech tree opposite the coal pit will be impacted as the roots are already exposed within our driveway, and we have worked very hard to preserve that tree. The pit next to the Lynch's shed, well, I don't have to talk about that because you are moving that. But now you're going to be running it because I only had 2 seconds to look at it, in front of the 11 arborvitae that is where you have now moved it. It's going to come out of their land and it's going to go right underneath 11 20-foot, 30-year-old arborvitae, and including 3 70-year-old maples that are also there that are not shown on the plan, and all within the buffer zone whose root systems will clearly be negatively impacted. Because the old utility infrastructure is in the middle of the driveway, the pipe will necessarily, per the site plan, be located to the right side of the entrance to the driveway, lined with 45, you just put up a picture of it, 30-foot, 30-year-old irreplaceable arborvitae whose root systems will be hit, in my estimation, because of their age, as the pipe is driven within inches of them. And I have included photographs of just some of the trees. All the other utilities for 125 Stage Harbor, including gas, sewer, electric, Verizon, and Comcast, are now coming in from Stage Harbor, just as all my services do and other homes along Stage Harbor. I don't believe the explanation is sufficient as to why water service should not be brought in from there as well. It has already been trenched. You can make the trench bigger to allow space or move the electrical. Within a no
Ms.
disturb
Gibbs,
and
I'm
buffer
going to have
zone.
to ask you to kind of wrap this up, please.
I'm almost finished. Since that trenching was within a no disturb and buffer zone, to approve further excavation now impacting vegetative wetland within the buffer zone and within feet of the no disturb zone on the owner's property makes no sense when there's already a trenched alternative. It's bad enough that we've lost many huge trees to storms over the last 3 years, but to lose countless more irreplaceable trees from unnecessary excavation should not be acceptable to anyone, especially conservation. It's unreasonable and wrong that I will not now have both my front lawn boundary and my driveway excavated for this project when I was explicitly told by the contractor they would have no utilities coming down the drive. 125 Stage Harbor has only one utility easement over my property. Now it will have 2, yet that is what they're asking from you. In the past, commissioners have taken into consideration abutter objections when there were far less invasive alternatives. I'm asking you to deny this request as it is not a minor field change. It will have significant environmental and negative impact to our properties and vegetation when there is a far more suitable option for us, the town, and the owners, with all services in one location from Stage Harbor. In the event of future failures, it will be far more accessible for the homeowners to repair from Stage Harbor and less invasive and potentially damaging and disruptive for the Lynches in my property. If you're not prepared to deny this request today, I ask this item be continued to the fall, as I only received the site plan change on Monday from Nikki, and Tom Temple, Pam Jones, and many town personnel have been out of the office. In the interim, I ask that a new site plan be provided showing all the impacted tree locations, just as what was provided to you for the 125 Stage Harbor property. Our trees and wildlife habitat they provide are just as important. I also ask the pipe location be staked and commissioners visit the property so you can see firsthand the potential and extensive environmental damage that will occur. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gibbs. David, briefly, do you have a response? You're muted if you're speaking.
The only comment I would make is that the owners of 125 have a right to replace the water service where it is now. But that is clear. And they're also, in replacing it where it is, they are responsible for bringing the property back to pre-construction conditions. That's their responsibility. If the abutter wants the water service in a different location, My clients can agree to that, but they're not required to agree to that. And the abutter can move the water service, and it would be her cost, at her cost. Again, the language is clear in the easement. We have a right to replace it where it is. And in doing this for 30 years, I have never seen a mowing operation that impacted trees. It just does not happen. It's almost a fantasy to say that it does. That'd be the end of my comments.
Okay, thank you. And does that include, so I understand how you're avoiding the arborvitae's by keeping the excavation and the mowing operation in the existing driveway. What about the Japanese maples and other specimen trees that Ms. Gibbs was referring to that are also in its path?
Because the driveway is paved, it's unlikely that there are any significant roots under the driveway, because roots tend not to grow where there's not a water source. But again, I've seen mowing operations go through areas of thick vegetation, and everything survives. And we're talking about the mole is about 3 inches in diameter. And given the extensive root systems of these trees, a 3-inch boring will have no impact. One of the advantages of the mole is it tends to push things aside as it goes along under subsurface, and unless it encounters a significant rock or something, it tends to get through the other side with no issues at all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hyson, I see, has a hand raised. You're muted, so here we go. Okay.
Hi, my name is Joe Hyson. I'm one of Arlene Lynch's sons, and she just asked me to speak on her behalf on a couple of questions. First, to be clear, as I think is in her letter, if there were any way for this to be done with the water coming in through Stage Harbor Road, that would be definitely her first choice for it to happen that way, so that she didn't have to live with these disruptions. If you're going to force this to happen going down the driveway at Cross Street, can there be some guarantee that if any of the trees along this route die or get sick and have to be taken down within the next 2 years, that they would be replaced with like kind trees and not little stubby things that are like 2 feet tall, but tall trees that would be similar to what was there, or at least tall enough so that if people are walking down the driveway, they're not seeing in the windows of the house. Yeah, so that's just my first comment there.
Okay. Do you have other comments?
My mom would want to make sure that if this has to happen on her property, that she gets notified as to when people are showing up, who's showing up, and that she knows that they've got proper insurance. Because right now there have been, over the last year or more, there's been workers who've been coming onto the property unannounced. She sees them on a recording, or just kind of discovers things happening, and it's not very neighborly for that to happen.
Okay. Okay. We have noted those kinds of concerns. They are well outside of our authority to address in these kinds of situations. And I believe we said this originally when this project was first approved, that we urged the applicant and the abutters to remain in communication with each other as the project goes forward. That seems not to have happened. That's unfortunate, because it leads to these kinds of issues of frankly, of distrust. So I'll repeat our plea to the applicant that having workers on a butter's property without prior notification is a really bad practice, and it leads to this. So, but we have no ability to actually force that. We're just going to remind them that That's should be avoided. In terms of the restoration of any areas that are damaged, it's the applicants, it's the actor's responsibility legally to restore any area that is damaged. That's outside of our jurisdiction as well. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a legal obligation to do that, to repair and restore anything that happens as a result of their activity. So that's already there for you. I think we heard from Mr. Clark the reasons why the cross street location was chosen. And from an environmental perspective, we all have to make a decision about this, but it strikes me that the impact to the coastal bank is environmentally a much greater concern than this attempt to do a minimally invasive installation of the water line. But let me, is that all, Mr. Heisen? Do you have, your hand is still up. Did you have anything else?
This is just something I'm throwing out there, and I don't know if this would be unwelcomed by any of the other parties that are involved in this. But the original water line went down the driveway and then went into the property of the Beechwood, and then it kind of turned in. And I don't know if that would, if following that water line, if this is going to have to happen and not do Stage Harbor, if that would be better or more protective of any trees or not, and if that would be preferable. I'm just throwing that out as an idea. That might cause more complications, and I don't know if any of the parties involved would even want to consider that. But I'm just looking at the map that my mom has of her property, and it looks like the old water line seemed to go straight down the driveway and in, and I don't know if that would be better or more protective of any mature trees on the Gibbs's property. But I'm just throwing that out as an idea. If something someone would want to consider.
Suggestions to resolve this. That's the second suggestion we've heard. And David, let me ask you this: is there a willingness on your client's part to engage in some further conversations with these neighbors before you finalize and make a decision about the plan?
Absolutely. I mean, our intent is to keep the disturbance on the neighbor's properties to within the existing driveway. So if there's a preferred location to put one of these pits for the retrieval and of the mole, that can be worked out in the field. There's no reason, like I said, to dig any closer to any of the trees than we have to.
Okay. Okay. We could continue this and give all of the parties an opportunity to have some further discussions and see if you can come to an agreement that everybody can live with. I'm just looking at the calendar. The next scheduled hearing is July 14th. We could possibly fit it in at the work session if it's a simple straight up or down vote on the 7th.
I'm sorry, I had to step away for a second. What was that?
I'm giving the applicant and the abutters an opportunity to have some further discussions and try and resolve their differences. And I'm offering a continuance of this to either the hearing on the 14th of July, or we could probably fit it in on the work session on the 7th if they've reached an agreement and we're just doing a vote.
We do have a lot on the 7th, but I wouldn't imagine
we can't have another hearing about it. We can't have another half hour, which we've now spent already, and we've got to wrap this up for today.
Yeah, and I apologize for that. I didn't think it was going to take this long. Obviously my client's position is they love they really need a resolution today because they're without drinking water at their house right now. But if the commission is inclined to continue this so that we can discuss this further with the abutters, I would prefer the 7th of July.
All right. We'll do that, and I urge everybody to try to come to some agreement so that when we pick this up on the 7th, it is ready for a quick vote, and we don't have to, because we do have a very full work session agenda. Yep. So with that, is there a motion to continue this to July the 7th?
we have a couple of hands up. Do we want to address those or one hand up?
Nope, I think they've all been, I can't tell. Mr.
There
Heiss?
is- Joe has his hand up again.
Okay,
Just a quick, my mother would welcome the opportunity to talk further.
good. I'm glad to hear that. Ms. Gibbs? you have last-
Yes, and I would as well, as long as it is agreed that, during that meeting, we will choose a date, agree on a date that is okay for all of us. Because there are people, that have been scheduled to come in through that period, and that's a big concern.
That would absolutely be part of what we would hope you all would agree on, is to
And
find
an agreement on the quality of the restoration, that it be done properly and look exactly how it looks now.
I leave that in the hands of all of you, and I'm sure you will work that out. So with that, is there a motion to continue to July the 7th?
Move to continue to July 7th.
Clark, second.
Okay, roll call vote to continue 125 Stage Harbor Road to July the 7th. Commissioner Walls,
Aye.
Pitts,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Latin,
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's unanimous, 6-0. We will see you when we really hope will be a very brief meeting on July the 7th. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Nikki, moving on.
Notices of intent, 1711 Old Queen Anne Road, Craig and Catherine Peters, map 3I, parcel 1, proposed catwalk. This is actually was continued to vote on an order of conditions after David Clark addressed a couple of the issues. So with that, I'll move on to David.
Thank you, Nikki. David Clark on behalf of the Peters. So after the last meeting, kept me up at night because I do recall an aluminum alternative to the through flow, and I just, after quite a few hours of searching prior to that meeting, I could not find it. And then I did recall finally it was a wastewater project that we were looking at. Aluminum products for grading for a platform that allowed sewer gases to pass through and up to the vents. And so I went to that vendor's website and found the equivalent. So that's what the plan has been changed to, back to the original configuration with this product. The only drawback is it's 3% less light penetration than the through flow. The other drawback for the client is it's 4 times as much money, but given that it's only 16 feet of catwalk, it's not a huge price increase. But this allows the sections to still be portable, although it's slightly heavier than the plastic, but it accomplishes all the same goals.
Thank you, David. I have to say we were pleased, to put it mildly, that you had that your research turned it up, because I think many of us felt that there surely had to have been a product out there that met the needs and the goals that everybody had expressed about this project.
Yeah, and I think I was the one that told the commission months and months and months ago that there was an aluminum alternative, but I could never find it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Glad you did. So I think a 3% reduction in the light is, at least in my view, is a perfectly fine price to pay. I know there will be times in the future when we will be dealing with larger structures for whom the price increase of the aluminum over the vinyl is more significant than it is in this. But however, this seems to be the right result for this proposal. You all have seen there's a revised order of conditions that was put into the Dropbox for your review. It has been, the findings were amended to refer to the original proposal to use the through flow at 40%. and the concerns that commission members expressed about the potential for degradation of the polyvinyl material, and the revision to the aluminum of 38%. And I, just as I was sitting here looking at it, amended the project description, which still referred to the polyvinyls. It now says extruded aluminum material with a grate pattern that allows a minimum of 38% of sunlight to penetrate. And I think other than that, the order of conditions is the same. So are there other comments? And I got to move my screen over here. Comments
I
or
got a
questions?
question, Janet.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just couldn't tell from the maps and the diagrams where the so-called permanent section was going to be placed. And I could be my own ignorance, but I couldn't figure it out. So I just thought I would ask where along the track of the catwalk and the ramp the permanent section was to be placed.
Yes, and that, I think that should be made part of the findings, that the permanent sections are just the helical screw supports.
And looking at the diagram that you've got up there, David, can you put a marker or something where that permanent section would be located?
You said it's just the ramp? Wait.
Yeah, it says
No, it's the helical screw supports, the piles.
These.
So yep, she's circling it right now. It's just those.
Yeah.
What gets actually drilled into the substrate to support the pier. So it's those 2 7/8 inch helical steel piles are the only things that are permanent.
Yeah, no, it's just the piles that are permanent.
Just the piles. The project description does say, and I can add this to make it actually a finding, because I think that's right. Permanent alteration is limited to 6 3-inch galvanized permanent posts, which impact a total of 0.29 square feet.
Okay, well, that solves my question.
Okay, that's now a finding. Other questions? Somebody, Bob Rawls, go ahead.
Yes, obviously, Dave, thank you for your sleepless nights and finding that product. Could you, or if it's not in the materials you submitted, send Nikki the link to that product in case we would want to suggest it to future applicants in a similar situation?
Yeah, good point.
I will.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or changes to the draft order of conditions? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the hearing for 1711 Old Queen Anne Road and approve the order of conditions?
Move to approve or close the hearing and to approve the order conditions.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote for 1711 Old Queen Anne, order of conditions. Commissioner Rawls?
Aye.
Pitts?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Latin?
Aye.
Sullivan?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's unanimous, 6-0. That order of conditions is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Appreciate the effort that you put in there. It paid off with a good result for everybody. All right, Nikki, what do we have next?
80 Bridge Street, Stage Harbor Marine, map 14A, parcel 3-10. This is proposed bulkhead replacement. Just an FYI, we do not have an SE number as of yesterday. I haven't seen anything that we got one today either. There's NHESP has not responded yet. Mass DMF has no recommendations. So they're set, but the SE number and NHESP still need to get to us, so we cannot vote on it officially today or anything.
Okay.
And Don Monroe is here to speak about it.
Hello, Chair and Nikki and Commissioners, it's Don. I also have Todd Turcott on the line. He's our new division manager. I just want to introduce him because if there's some other technical questions in relation to this type of removal installation, he's got a lot of knowledge and expertise in this kind of removal and installation. It's not your typical removal and installation where we're actually installing the proposed bulkhead behind the existing bulkhead. And I sent an email to Nikki trying to explain the couple of scenarios that we're not sure of. And that's the reason for the excavation that we're proposing behind the existing wall. That's because we don't know what the failure looks like of the existing wall below the mud line. And after reviewing this with Todd and reviewing the potential two types of failure, the one that we're hoping for is that basically at the mud line where the existing wall is, it's a wooden wall, it's actually broken and leaning seaward. That's the easiest scenario. That would be, that would allow us to actually install the entire vinyl proposed bulkhead with a dead man system tying it back into the existing ground behind, where we would not have to do anything other than just drive the new sheets in, put the dead man system in, then backfill, and then pull the old wall out. There may be an instance in behind during that scenario where there's existing timber that we're not sure might be, who knows, when they did the construction way back, they may have tossed materials in behind the wall and then just backfilled it. So this gives us an opportunity to remove any of that creosote type of material that might be there, in addition to removing the wall once we get the new one installed. That's like a braking failure. The other type of failure that could have happened after reviewing this with Todd is that it could be that the whole system rolled forward or seaward. That would mean that the toe or the tip of the existing timbers could be more landward than what you see visually. We wouldn't be able to find that out until we excavate. And in that scenario, in order to alleviate any materials entering the water body, and in both scenarios, we would have a bottom anchored silk curtain out around the whole operation before we even started. But in that scenario, the tip would be in the way of actually driving the sheets in the footprint of the existing wall. So in that scenario, the contractor would be instructed to remove in 2 foot sections, because that's what the new wall comes in roughly 2 foot sections. Remove 2 feet of the existing wall, then drive those new sheets in that location, and then move down the line in that fashion so that the wall that isn't removed would stay intact until we were able to move down the line, then take out 2 more feet, then install the 2 new sections and piggyback down the line, so that it alleviates the potential for any materials to get into the water body between the silk curtain and the outer wall. So we've really kind of paid attention to that obvious concern because of the type of material that the old wall is made of. So the intent is to really make sure that we police that and do it in such a way that we don't introduce anything into the resource areas of concern, land under ocean, land containing shellfish. That is a coastal bank, but it's actually the bulkhead itself. So we're trying to reinforce and redo that so that it acts more appropriately to protect the upper buildings and parking area. So we kind of went through those performance standards in a detailed way in your package. We've tried to detail the plan as to what we want to do for the installation. And hopefully through that email to Nikki about the description of the methodology, we can submit that as part of the package. If you want a more written description, I could just cut and paste that email into a formal letter if you'd like. Since it sounds like we're going to be continued because of the fact that we don't have natural heritage, and I can't remember who else, Nikki, we were waiting for.
Just the SE number from DEP.
Oh, the SE number from DEP. So this is an effort to repair what's out there because it's pretty dilapidated. It's been left for a while. There are some other details. We do propose gravel, about a 5-foot band. It's shown in the detail section AA, so that there is drainage that's allowed to take place behind the wall off the pavement. That's shown in section AA. You can see that stone area about 5 to 6 feet wide. There will be pavement placed from that point to back to the building because they do use that back area as area to put boats in the water and do other, things related to the marina operation. There is a concrete pad that's shown on the plan view. Nikki, it's to the west. If you look at the plan view, yeah, to the west. Yep. Keep going over it. Yep. I'm sorry, to the east, my fault, to the east. Sorry about that. Keep going east a little more, Nikki. Keep going past keep going towards to the east. Yeah, see the concrete pad that's there now, that's going to be rebuilt because that's a pad that they use to launch boats off of. So we're keeping some of the features that are there, the pavement, but we are adding features, which are obviously the new wall, but also the drainage behind to make sure that we capture any runoff before it gets into the water body in a stone kind of lined trench along the top of the wall. Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. Joe Kitts has his hand up. So Joe, go ahead. You can.
Thank you, Chair. The soil around the bay side on the north and east, and I guess would be south sides, is highly contaminated. Do you have ideas about what should be done?
Well, during this process, we'll make sure that we don't allow any of that kind of material that's behind the existing wall, as well as the existing wall that will be removed. We'll take that material out. The sediment that you're talking about, I believe in 2008, there was an approved plan. There's also a licensed plan for dredging. That would be considered most likely maintenance dredging or improvement dredging, either one. The applicant at this time needs to address the immediate problem, which is the existing wall, but down the line in the future, there will probably be some dredging proposed. And at that time, we would address the sediment quality or not so good quality and dispose of it or propose a disposal that's appropriate. We do a lot of that, so that wouldn't be unfamiliar to us to deal with contaminated sediments. At this stage, though, because the wall is an immediate need, we're not really addressing the sediment out in front of the existing wall.
Yeah, I was more concerned about, there's that big yellow truck that sits right there by the southern side of the bulkhead, that it looks like diesel and oil has leaked into the soil for years and years there. And, I'm just concerned about disturbance of that soil and its impact on the resource area.
So that's a good question. So that material that comes, in our proposal, we're removing it looks like where you're talking, it's more to the, it looks like it's to the west side of the property. And
that's right, yeah.
So we are excavating out, that has a paved surface, but you're right, there may have been some materials that leaked into the soil on the landward side of the bulkhead. So that would definitely be hauled off site, and none of that material will be used to be replaced behind the wall. It would be backfilled with clean material. So the intent is to remove that material. Whatever the toxicity is of that material, since it's not dredge material, it would have to go to an appropriate landfill. One of those landfills that receives that kind of material is Childs. So that's where most of this excavated material would be going to. But because it's not dredge material, because it's excavation behind the wall, it doesn't have to go through the same protocols as dredge material, but it has to go to a landfill that receives that kind of material. And Childs is approved for that.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Other questions from commission members? Nikki, I have a question for you. So the email that Don has described that he sent that has more detail about the work protocol that's going to be followed for the removal, is that something that we can is that if he puts that into a formal letter and then it becomes part of the record and can be put into the order of conditions, is what's in that sufficiently described? Or do you want him to do anything different?
I'll have to review it a little bit more because I got
Okay.
it during the meeting, so I haven't
Oh, okay.
reviewed too fully.
You haven't reviewed it in the last 20 seconds? Okay.
But I
do it.
think
Okay.
so. I mean, it's just one of those projects that there's going to be unknowns and they're not exactly sure how they're going to have to proceed. So I think as long as, I'd like to be on site when it kind of begins. Honestly, for some of it, just to learn how the process goes, as well as just make sure that everything's going accordingly. But
Yeah.
from what I did skim of the email, it seems to be sufficient. I'll double check after the meeting and let Dawn know if I need any more information.
Okay.
But yeah, just have it put in a formal letter. We can add it to the file and incorporate it into the conditions.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll do that. And I agree that in a project that has so many known unknowns and probably a lot of unknown unknowns in addition, we can't anticipate what everything is, but we can try to create a framework, a decision framework or a process framework for dealing with them as they are discovered. So
Yeah, I agree with that.
do that in the order of conditions.
Yeah.
Bob Rawls, question?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to absorb the email either, but first glance, it seems like it differs significantly from what was described in the application. So would it make sense for Don to update the application itself rather than just have a new email that sort of supersedes the application? In other words, update it so that the record is clean.
Well, Bob, we could definitely update the narrative. So what we've done in the past is when we're reviewing these, because we're going to be getting close to getting a permit. And as the chair has indicated in the past, we have, after we get the permit, we know we're able to go forward. We do construction details so that the contractor knows how to proceed. And we can share that information as well when we're ready to actually do any construction. It certainly makes sense. Nikki comes on board, but we've done like an addendum to the project narrative, if you would, so that it updates the construction protocol after, because we don't just do these one and done. We review them constantly because new things are coming online all the time. So that's why Todd has been instrumental in our coming on board as our division manager. Has a lot of experience from Connecticut and Rhode Island, and we're so fortunate to have him on our team now, that he looked at this one as well and saw some things that we could address and make our job a lot easier, and then also in turn the commission's job easier. So Bob, I don't have a problem with updating the file so that it's part of the quote original record rather than just an email. So I have no problem with that.
Okay, good. The I just following up on Joe's comments about contamination in the material that's behind the existing bulkhead. So you've told us how you're going to haul it off to an appropriate facility. However, what can we do to prevent it from happening in the future?
Okay, that's a good question. So the materials that we're using in this case to replace the existing wall, as much as some commissions don't like the idea of vinyl, the vinyl we're going to be driving at a much deeper depth to maintain and keep the materials that are on the landward side of this project on the landward side. We know there'll be some seepage, but I think through the excavation, we'll be able to get rid of a lot of the concerned material. We won't be able to necessarily dig down to the point where we get every bit of it, but the sheets that we're using and the methodology we're using to install will really minimize that potential additional contamination beyond the existing wall. And then the removal of the existing wall will really alleviate any of the additional contamination that might happen in conjunction with the new sheets being in between that old wall and the material that's being excavated. So I think this is going to be such a better scenario in moving forward, because there'll be drainage addressed. There'll be grading addressed so that much of the material, much of the water runoff stays on the site and leaches down into the existing materials instead of going out into the water body. This also works towards the betterment of the site under the stormwater pollution prevention plan that is in place that the EPA reviews. And that's part of the EPA's, one of the recommendations they've made is that the bulkhead be redone under the SWIP, and that's an addendum to the SWIP. So this is part and parcel to a global effort to make the site better.
So you're actually filing a stormwater management plan separately from this.
It's actually a stormwater pollution prevention plan that's required for any industrial activity that could potentially deliver contaminated water to a federal water body, which Stage Harbor is. And every marina in the state of Massachusetts is required to have one and is required to indicate deficiencies and then how they're going to address those deficiencies. So it's part of that pollution prevention plan, as well as this application to make the changes under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Chapter 91 regulations.
Right. So I guess to Nikki or Janet, we don't normally, do we see those stormwater plans, or are we supposed to? Is it outside of our purview?
It's, I mean, a lot of times we'll get a copy and we'll get the response, but we don't, review them at meetings.
Right. All right. Well, I'm glad there is one. I'm glad it's happening. I hope that part of it is would direct that the trucks that are leaking material not be parked at the top of that bulkhead. Anyway, that's what I have.
Thank you. Anything else? Other questions or comments from other commission members? Anything else that you want Don to come back with when we come back on this one? Right now, I just have the, once Nikki approves of the language for the revised narrative, Don will put that in and revise the narrative accordingly. And the other aspect is for the order of conditions, the soil contamination soil issue, and the process for dealing with issues that arise during the course of the project. Anything else? All right, so we still need an SE number. We need a National Heritage letter. Nikki, what do we have available for the next, what's the next available?
I think the 14th should be fine. We haven't hit our filing deadline yet, so I don't know what is really on that meeting, but I think the 14th should be fine. That will also give me time to just run it by Renee and Shellfish to see if she has any comments, but I think the July 14th meeting.
Okay, make a note of that. Does that work for you, Don? What is this? Is this going to be a fall project?
Yes, fall, correct. So yes.
All right.
That would be great. The 14th would be good.
Okay, is there a motion then to continue 80 Bridge Street to July the 14th?
Move to continue to July 14th.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote for 80 Bridge Street. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Kitts.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
I vote aye. That's 6-0 unanimous. We will take this back up on July the 14th. Thank you very much, Don.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, Nikki. What's next?
We have 54 and 0 Crows Pond Road, Joan and Paul Parsons, map K10K, parcel 17L6 and 18L5, removal and construction of a single-family home and site improvements. And I believe Sean Riley is here to speak on this one, as well as Jen Crawford.
Sean, you're muted. If you're
Yep.
starting to speak.
There we go.
Hello.
Good morning. Sean
Morning.
Riley,
Jen.
Coastal Engineering, and I think we have Jen and Will Crawford from Crawford Land Management. Will is the newest member of the Crawford team.
I want to see him.
Where is
Well, Sean's talking. I can go get him for a quick peek.
Yeah, you gotta just hold him up at least.
All right, let me, if you don't mind, I'll share my, my desktop.
Yep.
Let's see. Let me try that again.
Your
All right, there we go.
counselors, are they tutor ones or studio ones?
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute, Sean. Oh, my
Oh,
God.
yeah.
Baby alert, baby alert. Oh, God. Isn't he adorable? Oh, did you just wake him up? He looks like he's just waking.
He was in the middle of eating, but I told Carla that he had to come and say hi and visit.
Oh, he's
Hi,
so
Mr.
sweet.
William. Welcome to the world.
Yeah, welcome.
Everything's approved.
Yeah, right. The commission approves.
Well,
Okay.
I have to adjust it because we're about to.
Let me,
All right.
hold on. I think someone else in the background has their microphone on.
Okay, everybody, please mute again. Okay.
You guys mute your. I can hear somebody out there talking.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've got it handled there. All right, so back to the point of order here. This is a fairly straightforward raise and replace project. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so the red shaded area is the existing house deck and driveway. You can see that the majority of the house lies within the 50 to 100 foot buffer. And so we're proposing the house to be shifted back further from the top of coastal bank. A majority of the house is to be placed outside of the 100-foot buffer. And we have a reduction of coverage of building, house, and porch coverage of over 500 square feet within the 50 to 100. There are some small accessory structures. There's a small patio that protrudes now into the 50-foot no disturb zone. And there's a dog pen that also enters the 0 to 50-foot buffer zone. The result of the project will pull everything out of the 0 to 50-foot no disturb zone, which includes the installation of some pool and some hardscape. We provided roof, gutters, downspouts, and dry wells for all of the proposed house, as well as a series of deck drains for the pool that's to be routed to a dry well that's outside of the 100-foot buffer. The septic system is well beyond what you're seeing on the screen outside of the 100-foot buffer as well. As part of the increase in coverage, we have, as I said, we have a complete decrease of all coverage within the 0 to 50 with the removal of that patio. And we have an increase, a net increase in coverage of approximately 1,100 square feet within the 50 to 100, which would require a minimum of a 1-to-1 mitigation. We are providing over 7-to-1 mitigation with invasive removal and with the removal of 2,656 square feet of lawn. The lawn extends down to and onto the coastal bank. That's this green shaded area is all lawn that's to be removed and replaced with native plantings. So that's a summary of what's proposed. I'll let Jen discuss her mitigation plan because she has some removal impact of some trees. So I'll let her discuss what she's proposing for mitigation.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, so I'm gonna walk through just the really basic pieces, and then I'll take you guys through some of the more non-traditional parts of the plan that's in front of you. So in summary, with the naturalized areas, most of the naturalized areas are the coastal bank or along the eastern or western property line. As Sean already noted, the existing lawn goes right up to the top of the coastal bank for around 2/3 of the length of the coastal bank, basically. The naturalized areas that are existing within your jurisdiction are comprised almost exclusively of invasive or introduced and exotic species. The exception is some scattered native trees that are throughout the property. So the ones that you see in the dark green color, so to speak, that are through the middle of the property and on the eastern side are an example of some of those scattered native trees that are there. Like Sean also said, with the increase in the outer buffer zone, it requires around 1,100 square feet of mitigation. The portion that we are showing for lawn removal is around the 2,600 square feet. And then in addition to that, the naturalized areas along the eastern and western property lines result in an additional around 5,300 square feet of restoration work. So together with those two components of the project, the proposal ends up resulting in basically the restoration of a completed vegetated buffer strip along the coastal bank that's around 20 feet wide. The component, so that's basically the nuts and bolts of the project in terms of the easy parts. So the component of the project that we've chosen to basically take a pretty non-traditional, I think, approach to is in regard to some of the trees on the property. So in particular, there are 3 eastern red cedar trees that are located right along the 50-foot buffer line. And Sean's pointing those out now. So with those 3 trees in particular, even though they are not directly in any sort of area that we are trying to build, in my discussions with the property owners as well as with the project team, it's noted that those are in fairly close proximity to some of the proposed construction work. So what we've done is to try to take a really proactive approach at being able to preserve the biomass and honestly the quantity of mature native trees that are on the property. So what I did is, I don't know if any of you are familiar with H.F. Johnson Tree Farm or not, but they are a local company right on Cape Cod. They've been in business, I think, since like 1920. I've worked with them in the past, and they're extremely knowledgeable and very, very good at what they do. So Barry Johnson came out, and I consulted with him on these 3 cedar trees in particular for the feasibility of basically what we know is that even though they might not show short-term impacts from construction, they are close enough where I believe that they will have some impact. And the 2 that are closest to the water, just within the 50-foot buffer line, also have English ivy and bittersweet growing on the water side of them. So they are they're still viable trees, absolutely, but they have been impacted. So what I discussed with Barry was the feasibility for actually spading them and moving them so that we can preserve them. And after his assessment, basically what we determined is that the one closest or outside of the 50-foot that Sean's pointing to right now on the screen, that one, Barry was very confident that could actually be transplanted and moved. So we have already accommodated and planned for that. The other 2, due to basically their proximity to each other, as well as the way that they're growing, the shape of them, they are not conducive to being able to be spaded and moved. So what we've proposed for those 2 trees is to basically replace them in kind. So when I was discussing this with Barry, and Sean has brought up a couple of pictures that I was able to get from him, they have eastern red cedar trees. They have acres and acres of trees that they grow locally right here on Cape Cod. And these are examples of some of the eastern red cedars that they have. They're around 10 to 12 inches in diameter, trunk diameter, and they're about 30 feet tall. So H.F. Johnson Tree Farm actually specializes in moving and transplanting mature trees. So this is what they do. So what my proposal for this project to you is, and this is where the non-traditional part comes in, is that we know that those 3 trees are likely going to be impacted by construction in some way, shape, or form. So like I said, to take a proactive approach, we've proposed to actually transplant one of them and replace 2 of them with mature trees that are the same size. We've proposed to locate them within the restored area so that they're not going to be sitting in lawn or in English ivy or in any other places that are less conducive to their health, but actually within the restored area, within the vegetated buffer strip, closer to the resource area. So that is one of the ways that we are hoping to really preserve the integrity of the project, the integrity of the trees on the property along with this project. In addition to that, there are 4 trees that are noted along the western property line with the black dots that Sean's pointing to now. Those 4 trees, I believe, were all smaller eastern red cedar, but they're dead. They've been overgrown by vine species. So those 4 trees are already dead. So we are proposing that they be removed. There is a non-native spruce tree as well as 2 pitch pines along that same property line that we would be proposing to remove for construction activity. So in replacement, we have 5 additional eastern red cedar trees along that area that are 8 to 10 foot in height. So not quite as big as the 2 that we're proposing direct replacement of, but still a pretty decent size eastern red cedar to be putting in. And then in addition to that, on the eastern side of the property, where we are doing the restoration work along that slope, we've also proposed to put in 3 red maples, so to also replace a deciduous component. So that's kind of the non-traditional, I think, or at least something that you don't see very often, maybe with some of the projects that come in front of you. So at the end of the day, I guess at the end of the project, what we will be resulting in will be naturalized areas that have more native trees than what currently exists, as well as a fully vegetated buffer strip along the top of the coastal bank that doesn't currently exist, as well as 8,000 square feet of restored habitat, which right now is lawn or invasive species. So I think for a raise and rebuild project that is completely out of the no disturb zone, it's been a joy to work on this project. We'll just put it that way in comparison. So I am more than happy to answer any and all the questions that you have.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for this this unusual approach. We have had occasion to deal with Johnson's Tree Farm in the past, and we've been impressed with what they can do. And so I'm pleased to really happy personally to see that. I have a question for you, and I have one for Sean before opening it up. So where this, I like seeing the VBS along the top of the bank. I'm worried though that it ends, the area right around the existing boathouse where no activity is planned is like being completely overtaken by Phragmites. And I worry about doing this restoration project with Phragmites right at the back door that will threaten to come in and destroy it.
Yep. So I did figure that you would ask about that. And we actually had a couple of site meetings where we discussed that the coastal bank and the nature of the plants on the coastal bank being invasive with the Phragmites, et cetera. And so the owners are very aware of that condition. And at least at this point in time, they wanted to be able to move forward with the other parts of the project. It's not that it's off the table, so to speak, but it's not something that we included with this first application. We did discuss with them that the order could potentially be amended in the future to include it. And so at this time, they wanted to be able to proceed with the project as is, but they have thought about the ability to include that as well. Obviously, I can't make any promises, but I'd like to think that if we do the restoration work on the other portions, they're going to love it so much that they'll just say, go ahead and do the coastal bank too, and we'll be back to you shortly. But that's what the maintenance portion of the project is really for and is designed for, because we come up against that whether it's on the same property that we're working or whether it's invasives that are on adjacent properties. How do you keep them at bay, so to speak, and how do you keep the integrity of the part that you've restored intact? Right. And so they do understand that, and they are, willing to make a significant investment between being able to preserve the mature cedar trees as well as the additional restoration work that they're not required to do. And so I am very confident that this property owner will keep up with the maintenance component of it and will make sure that the integrity of those restoration areas stays intact to basically protect their investment that they've made. And hopefully we will be back to you with additional invasive management for the coastal bank.
I'm sure that sure would be great.
Yes, agreed.
Okay. Quick question for Sean. Sean, can you explain the to me at least, unusual shape and location of the retaining wall on the eastern side of the patio and building?
Sure.
What's happening over there that is needed?
Yep. So essentially, when you get in a situation where you have a walkout condition, where you have a higher grade at the front door of the house and you have a much lower grade at the rear of the house, you've got a significant change in elevation that needs to be addressed with the height of the building. So there's an average grade calculation that's taken around the building out 20 feet from the face of the building. That's how the Chatham regulations are written. So to accommodate a regular structure with a normal roof line that does have a walkout condition, we have this situation where we have to take into account the grades along this side of the house for our calculation. So the weird shape is to accommodate the grade that we need adjacent to this side of the house in order to make the height of the house work with the restrictions of the 30-foot height of buildings within Chatham. That's why you see a lot of gambrel houses, a lot of shallower sloped pitched roofs in Chatham, because there is a limit of 30 feet. So to accommodate that, we do have to have this unusual shaped retaining wall to keep the grade up along this side of the house, and then transition the grade from a higher elevation of approximately 28 down to 20 at the lower level.
Yeah, I'm looking at how it rises in the front from a start of about 20 up to 28 and then drops back off again, both down the eastern side and then less steeply down the southern side.
That's correct, and that's because of the transition. If we went out to the site, you would see that they had that walkout condition.
Yeah.
Similar transitions along the side of the house for the existing structure.
Okay,
So,
and this will be similar with the same kind of a walkout.
Exactly.
Area. Okay.
Well, one thing that I'd like to add in addition to that is that along where the proposed patios are, and just as Sean said, it's currently a walkout condition, maintaining the same or as similar as possible grades along that side does allow for us to basically safely tell you that where all those existing pitch pines are, as well as that apple tree in that area, that there shouldn't be any impacts to those areas, because we've maintained the proposed structure and proposed grades at the patio side to basically match existing, which then helps. It means that there's less site disturbance on that side.
Okay. And what is the proposed material for the patios?
They have the landscape architect hasn't chosen the materials yet.
Will they be pervious?
Yeah, I would say that around the pool area, we would want to be impervious so that we could direct the runoff to the drains, and also to eliminate any of the disturbance of the joints. But I think the two patios that are adjacent to the house could be a dry laid patio and could be conditioned as such.
Okay. And the three dry wells that are shown on your plan, I take it that the one that's closest to the pool is the one that you're just referring to, that will be designed to handle the runoff from the pool area?
That is correct. That is correct. Everything's routed from the pool back out of the 100-foot buffer to this dry well here. That's probably 130 feet from the top of Coastal Bank.
And then the one on the eastern side of the structure, maybe I'm misreading the grade lines here, but it looks like it's at the sort of at the height at the top. Is that
this one here?
Let's see.
The one on the upper right?
Yeah, the one on the upper right.
Yeah, that'll be up at the higher grade and the higher elevation behind the retaining wall, and basically accommodate this half of the house over in this area.
Okay.
And then the one at the lower elevation will accommodate the rear of the house and the rear roof line of the house.
Sean, we're still looking at my plan.
Oh, yeah. Are you?
Yeah, I have his up on my screen, so I can.
Do you?
Are these oversized? They look bigger than I normally see. Are they?
Yeah, they're just shallower. So you can either do a deeper, narrower, or you can do a shallower, wider. So it really depends on the configuration that you choose.
Okay. All right, questions, other questions from commission members?
Clark,
Yes, go ahead, Tom.
in the text of the proposal, it's mentioned that the property is adjacent to the Pleasant Bay ACEC, but I didn't see that, the boundary noted on your plan. Do you know where that is?
That would be 100 feet from the 10 contour, and I'd have to double check to make sure that we are in the ACC. And if you are correct, then it should be added to the plan, and it would be 100 feet from the 10 contour, which would be somewhere in this area.
Which are, I can't see anything.
Oh, it would be at about 90 feet from the top of Coastal Bank. So it would go right
Okay.
through the, yeah,
Right through the house.
correct.
Okay. Yeah, Kate, it's on your project narrative. It's section 3 of your project narrative that notes the presence of in the ACEC. The other question I had was the boathouse and wood deck. Do you know when those were built and if they were permitted?
I do not know the history of that boathouse.
How about the wood deck it's adjacent to?
Yeah, again, I don't know the history of them. They look relatively old. I didn't go back through the file to see what the history of those were. We weren't doing any work on them, so we hadn't done any investigation on those.
Well, if they weren't permitted, then I would think, well, one option would be that they would be removed, but I'm just asking for that reason.
Yeah, I guess that would be a separate from this application. I guess Nikki could probably look through the file, but we weren't doing anything proposed to that or modifications to that boathouse, so it wasn't part of this application package.
Okay, but the owners intend to use it, do they not?
They do.
Okay, well then, Nikki, is that possible for you to do, or is that?
I can look into it and see if it is existing or was ever permitted. Most of the time, these things are old enough that they weren't permitted. But generally, I can kind of see them on the GIS from the 90s. And if it's there back then, we kind of just say okay at that point a lot of the time. Or I can check and see if we have approved previous plans that have shown the boathouse. And then in that case, we would have to say that a plan was approved with it on there. So it's permitted at this, not necessarily permitted, but accepted.
Yeah.
And then we can put it in the conditions that we agree that the boathouse and the deck are allowed to stay. So then there can be official record.
I think it's a good idea to know. I agree with Tom, just because it's on the plan of record, so it carries the implication that it's approved by us in one way or another. So we can check into that. Yep.
And then I had a question on the coverage table that's on the plan versus the one I got from the packet. The overall number of 5,225 is the same. But a lot of the other numbers are slightly off. So I just want to make sure you submit either a revised plan that shows a change coverage table or a revised packet coverage table, just so that they match.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Yep.
I would also love to have the colored copies that you have been displaying,
Sure.
just for the file. It makes it a lot easier to see everything when I'm doing the certificate of compliance and.
Sure thing.
But just one copy of each of those.
Okay.
That it, Nikki? Is that it? Okay. Joe, you have a hand up?
Yeah, when I was at the house the other day, there's a stake on the front side of the house, would be the north side of the house, right at the edge of a bank that goes down into the wetlands or whatever that's being called down there. And it says house, I think, on it, or home. what is that corner right there? Because it truly is right on the top of the bank.
Yes, so that is the corner of the garage, and that bank that you see is just a depression. There is no wetland in that lower area. We went out and did soil borings and did investigations and had actually several people go out and take a look at that area because we knew that someone would bring that up and have question as to whether or not it was a wetland. It's definitely not a wetland. There are no hydric soils. There's no evidence of wetland, predominantly wetland plant species. So the corner that you're referring to is about 180 feet from the coastal bank. So it's out of jurisdiction. So yeah, I guess there's no wetland back there. So that corner of the house is out of jurisdiction.
Okay, and then there was a stake way out in that depression that I didn't walk out there, but can you tell me what that stake is all about?
We were looking at clearing limits outside of the jurisdiction with the homeowner and where they were looking to put driveways and accommodate other site features outside of jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Bob Rawls?
Yeah, I'm here. I just have a number of questions in no particular order. On the plan to put in those large mature trees, obviously that's an interesting and great thing. I don't recall, but correct me if I'm wrong, that wasn't stated in the application that they would be replaced with trees of that maturity or size or scope.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was going to say, so one of the things that, as I was reviewing this, just for context, I put the rest of these project documents together like 2 days before I had a C-section, so I do get a pass on this.
Granted.
On my plant schedule, there's 2 lines for eastern red cedar trees. The first one lists quantity 2, and then in size it says LK. I'm not exactly sure where LK came from, but what it's supposed to say for you is 10-inch to 12-inch DBH, which is which are those 2 replaced eastern red cedar trees. So it is supposed to be noted on my plant schedule that those are 10 to 12-inch DBH. The second eastern red cedar line item has a quantity of 5, and those are the 8 to 10 foot B&B that I was referring to that are in the 50 to 100 foot buffer. So anyway, so that was my fault, but they are noted on my plant schedule, and I'm more than happy to actually write in 10-inch to 12-inch DBH rather than LK, whatever that meant. I don't know.
We did have that question. What is that? Okay.
That would be good. That would be good so that it's certificate of time that we can check that.
Yeah, no, most certainly.
I noticed that the maps that Sean was showing were in color. The ones that I'm a digital only guy, so the ones I have were not in color. And the color maps are great. Just wondering whether or not we receive the color maps, Nikki, or whether or not the digital versions weren't color.
I had just asked Sean if he could submit a copy of each one of the colored ones.
Okay, good. The question, when I went to the property, I was actually surprised, I guess, because there's no existing conditions plan, that there's an existing pool, even though it's outside of our jurisdiction. So I guess I'll ask the question, why is the pool being moved from outside our jurisdiction to inside the resource area? I guess I could probably figure out what the answer is, but
yeah. Essentially, they're looking to regrade. They're going to remove that pool, and if you noticed on the property, it drops off in elevation significantly from the western boundary to the eastern boundary by almost 20 feet. So a lot of the property is unusable the way that it's configured and shaped. So we're looking to do a lot of grading outside of the jurisdiction. And also with the removal of the house and the construction of the new house and the disturbance limits, and having the ability to locate the structure in a closer proximity to the usable spaces of the house made more sense. to put it in that position. Again, you want your usable spaces, immediately adjacent to the house for access to the kitchen and other good things like that. So that's essentially why it was located in that position. But with all the mitigation and the increased buffer, we feel that this doesn't have any impact to the resource areas and will actually provide a greater benefit to the wildlife corridors and habitat with the removal of the invasives and replanting of the native vegetation.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you could make that argument. And strictly speaking, though, it's unfortunate in a way that we're having a pool that's outside being moved inside. It's permanent hardscape being mitigated with impermanent plants. But anyway, it is what it is, I suppose. I'm going to ask you about the lawn that will be in the NDZ and the lawn, if any, that will be in the outer aura. What is this? What is it? What is its nature?
Yeah, it'll be a Cape Cod fescue, Cape Cod mix.
Not sure that that's in the plans that we saw, so it should be mentioned there.
Yeah, it could be within the order as well. I'm sure that you guys would capture that within your order of conditions, special conditions.
Well, we might not. It's just always good to have it in the record so that if we don't forget about it, it's there.
Yeah.
Jen, do you have add a note to my plan since I need to give you a revision with that plant schedule and stuff anyway, so I'm happy to add a note about that.
And I assume that you know that there's no irrigation.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Right. Let's see. Is that now? I think Jen already talked about there's a path down to the boathouse. Is that similarly going to be fescue? Or is that's not going to be touched?
That's existing. Yeah, that won't be touched.
So whatever it is
and
now,
it will be smaller than what's currently there because we are restoring some of that area, so that path will narrow as well.
Any plan? What can you tell us about how the water for the pool will be handled? What will it be? Will it be trucked out, trucked in, and so forth?
We could just condition that any of the water would be disposed of outside of jurisdiction.
Okay. All right. Let's make a note of that.
A lot of the pools are left full. So we could just make a note that any disposal of that water should be outside of jurisdiction.
Right. I think that's what I have. I just echo Janet's concern about the Phragmites. There's plenty of it all along that coastal bank. It's going to take over. It's unfortunate it's not being dealt with at this point because we can't really. There's no way to ensure that the applicant will come back later and do it. I wish there was a way. Again, something that is what it is. All right, I think that's what I have.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Trina.
Hey, yeah, I actually only just have a comment. My questions have already been answered, but this is my first hearing where I actually see the proposal of mature trees being brought in to replace mature trees that are being brought out. And I think that's just phenomenal. I think that's just a wonderful thing to do to maintain the wildlife that is on the property, and just hope that we see more of that going forward. I think that's a great thing.
I agree.
And, I've been here since early March, and out of all the hearings we've seen, most properties are removing mature trees. And this is the first time I've ever seen a proposal for replacing with mature trees for mature trees.
Yeah, there is a significant expense for doing this, and the homeowner is willing to do that. So.
Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. All right, any other comments or questions?
I just want to note we don't have an SE number, so I'm hopeful we can continue it to the 7th if you guys approve it, and hope I get an SE number by then so that we could do an official vote on the 7th. But just throwing that out there is no SE number right now.
Okay. Tom.
2 requests. One is, would you show the path on your plan? And I'd like, could we get some information on the drilling that you did to ascertain whether or not a particular area was a wetland?
Sure.
Do you have your data
You know,
sheets?
show where the samples were drilled and then the results.
Yeah, not a problem.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Phoebe is a guest and has a hand up.
Oh, hi. Yes, I represent an abutting property at 32 Crows Pond Road, and I guess I'm concerned with the impact to the vulnerable wetland and wildlife, the impact from the demolition of the existing structure, and the proposed structure on grade-sensitive land abutting the coastal ecosystem at Riders Cove.
Okay. So you're asking what is the impact of those areas from this, the way the project is gonna,
how it's
okay. Fair question. Sean or Jen,
Sure.
who wants to handle that?
Sure. During construction, we show a limit of work and siltation barrier that is maintained. There is a site super that is required as part of the order of conditions to provide reports and also to maintain any of that siltation fence and siltation barrier. And then there's also construction protocols that are submitted as part of the notice of intent. And those protocols are reviewed on site with the agent and the contractors. A list of the contractors' names are also provided to the Conservation Commission and agent. A start of work is required. So there's a number of procedures and protocols in place for projects like these to ensure that there's no runoff or siltation into the resource areas, or that those resource areas aren't impacted. And also the work that's being done as part of the mitigation and invasive plant removal and the planting of the plants are done by qualified, certified pesticide applicators, and Crawford Land Management will probably be listed as the company to do the work. So there's a number of protocols in place to ensure the safety of the wetland resource areas.
And we do inspections, and we do require reports, and we review them pretty carefully to make sure that all of the construction processes are following all of the detailed requirements in the order of condition. So shouldn't the net result of this should be not only no net negative impact to the resource area, but an overall net improvement is the aim here. Did you have other questions?
No other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bob Rawls, you had another question?
Yeah, I forgot to mention one more, and that is we very typically and normally talk about demarcation of mitigation areas. There's a very significant mitigation area to this project on the coastal bank, and wondering whether or not we could talk about how, if and how we could demarcate that so that in the future landscapers don't go in there and do bad things to it, or future owners don't do bad things to it, and so forth.
Yeah, sure. We could have a condition that permanent markers be installed at the limits of the mitigation to delineate with those areas, and we've done that in the past.
Yes.
Yep. And I think in this particular case, we'll also probably require a cleared area, a mow strip of 4 feet or so between the mitigation area and where the Phragmites is, to try to protect that.
Okay.
Those are all
Good idea.
they're all standard now in our orders.
My only question with that is, would that be mowing the bank then?
Is it? I don't know. How do you, Jen, you said they would take whatever measures are necessary. Yeah, maybe mowing on the bank is not a good idea. How do you protect that mitigation?
So basically what we would end up doing in the course of maintenance for the project would be basically traversing right along the top of the coastal bank, because that's where that transition zone happens. And generally speaking, we end up managing a little bit of invasives, like a foot or two. It would be on the coastal bank side. And that that area essentially, if it essentially gets seeded and it just remains a grassy area that is kind of a strip between, and then it's very easy for us to use that to access that side of the mitigation area, as well as to kind of keep invasives at bay through that little strip. That's kind of what happens in practice, whether it's written in a special condition or shown on a plan. It's makes the most sense in the field for how to access it and maintain it.
Okay. Other comments or questions, Bob?
No.
Okay. So I have here, I'll just run through what I've got, Nikki, and tell me what I'm missing. They'll add the ACEC boundary line to the plan. Nikki will check to see if there's anything in the file to tell us anything about the boathouse and the deck. Sean will make sure the coverage tables are aligned and all the figures are accurate and are the same, consistent. Jen will revise the plant schedule, add the 10 to 12 inch diameter instead of the unknown LK. Add a note about the lawn to be a Cape Cod fescue, and Sean will provide the data sheets for the wetland delineation in the area, in the depression area in the front of the house. Anything else?
Just the demarcation of the mitigation area with, fence or boulders or, whatever the homeowner chooses.
Yeah.
And adding the path to the site plan, the one that goes down the bank.
So the path is shown. It's right here. It's just what's remaining. So essentially in the green area, this is all wide open lawn that leads down to that area. And what we're proposing is to remove the large section of lawn and really choke down what they're using as the path. So this is the path that they're using in the white.
You're not sharing your screen.
Can you put your site plan up so we can?
Sure. Sorry, I didn't realize I stopped sharing.
You do stop sharing.
There we go. All right. All right. Can you see the screen here?
Yep.
All right. So essentially, this is the space that is all lawn. This green area is all lawn now. That's all going to be removed and planted with native plantings. So right now, they could access anywhere through here. This is basically the opening path that leads down to the boathouse. So we're removing that lawn and basically choking down the access to what is there and what's going to remain in the white that leads down. So this is their access point down to the boathouse.
Is it that little finger, I'll call it a finger, going from the, what looks like the silt barrier down to the deck of the boathouse?
Correct. It's just this finger here that comes right around through the silt barrier, correct. And then the white transitions up into the yard.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Phoebe, did you have another question?
Oh, yes, I do actually. So my father actually called me and he has a question. My father resides at 32 Crows Pond Road and apparently, which is to the east. And apparently right on the property line between the pool, the proposed pool and the water, there's a fox's den. And my father's concerned about, just the wildlife that is inhabiting that area, which is rather densely overgrown, and there are animals that live in there.
All right.
I'm sorry. Could you describe where that is again? I'm sorry.
I guess it's on the eastern portion of the property line between where the proposed pool is and sort of the edge of the water. Along that region is a fox den, like a fox lives there, and there's a lot of wildlife in that area, and he's wondering if there will be any impact to the wildlife that is occupying that area.
So I didn't note any active dens while I was there during any of my observations, but that was definitely something that all of our technicians are, excuse me, are trained to be able to identify. And so we're more than willing to do some investigation along that area to determine if there is any sort of active active den along that side. And if there is, that would be something that we would definitely report back to Nikki, the agent, on, and then agree upon a protocol in order to be able to protect that and still be able to restore the area. So we're more than happy. We're more than happy to take a look at that. And that's actually something I can make sure to take a look at before we come back for the continued hearing to report back on. That's not a problem.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Good to know. So Nikki, are these changes some things that can come into you and be put into the Dropbox? Do we need another hearing, or should we schedule this for July 7th?
I think they're pretty much mostly logistical things, not anything that affects the overall project. So I think it could be something that I put in packets and you guys can take a look at, and then we can still move on to hopefully getting the SE number and approving an order on the 7th.
Okay, so with that proviso that everything comes in by the 30th.
Yes.
So that we have time, and that nothing is indicating any further issues or questions that anybody has that would require another hearing, we can tentatively try to get this on the 7th for an order of conditions.
Since there are a number of changes that I'm looking for, I will email it out to everybody as well and just say these things were changed. Does anyone see anything that's missing? Just so that we're all clear and nothing gets left behind.
Okay.
And we can get you those revised plans and information by next week.
Yep, okay. All right, then is there a motion to continue 54-0 Crows Pond Road to the work session on July the 7th?
Move to continue to the work session of July 7th.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Kitts.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
I vote aye, so that's unanimous. See you back here on July the 7th. Thank you.
Thank you all
very
for your
much.
time.
Thank you.
Appreciate this. Like it. All right, Nikki.
Last NOI is 32 Old Salt Works Road, James and Jennifer Mock, map 13L, parcel C32, SE 10-3496. This is for a new dwelling, pool, and shorefront protection.
Janet, would it be okay if we took a 5-minute break?
Sure. Taria, just hang on for 5 more minutes and we'll come
Sounds
right back to you. It's 11:22. We'll be back at 11:27.
Janet, I have returned.
Oh, hello. Thank you. All right. So you're back among us. We're just going to pick up at 32 Old Salt Works.
Thank you.
Continuing that hearing at 11:27.
Good enough, thanks.
Okay, Terry. Just waiting for Dallas. Dallas, you there? We can't really start until Channel 18 is ready for us.
It looks like we are on channel 18 right now.
Oh, we are?
Yes, I'm seeing everybody.
Okay, well then we don't need to, we weren't taken out, so we don't need to be.
We were taken out, but
Okay,
it's like we're
sorry
back.
sorry about the dead screen, everybody, for a while there, viewers, but okay, so
Nothing is showing. It
we're good to
shows
go.
like an
Thank
email.
you.
There we go. Okay.
Okay. All right, Nikki, ready to, for, did we do the, yes, you did read it, so, Taria, it's back to you.
Sounds great. Good morning, everybody. So we're back before you today to respond to the items that were previously discussed and provide additional information. And what I'd like to try to do, if you don't mind, is just share my screen because I colorized a plan that might help with some of the description.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. So last time I was before you, there was a question on the buffer zone coverage table. So what I'm showing on the plan that's before you, and I also submitted as Exhibit 1, is some clarification on how we calculated the coverage that's located within the 0 to 50-foot buffer from the top of Coastal Bank. So this area shown in orange, I'm not sure if it was very clear before, but that's actually existing concrete that's going to be removed. The area of that piece of concrete is 134 square feet. And then this is the portion of the new patio that's proposed. So overall, there's a net increase of 93 square feet of patio, but since this existing dwelling is being pulled back further to the north, there's actually an overall net reduction of over 1,000 square feet of coverage in the 0 to 50-foot buffer. Also, the last time we were before you, there was a request for providing a buffer strip along the top of the coastal bank. This is now proposed. We met with the client and we are now proposing an 8-foot wide strip along the top of the coastal bank in this area. This total area of mitigation proposed here is 1,300 square feet, just over that. And it also includes providing new native plants between the top of the fiber roll and the top of the coastal bank. So between the top of the coastal bank, which you can lightly see in gray here, to the edge of the proposed mitigation, this piece is 8 feet, plus we have the additional square footage resulting from providing the native plants between the top of the fiber roll and the top of the coastal bank. So overall, that's 1,364 square feet that's being proposed. In addition to that mitigation, we are also now proposing invasive removal area along this eastern side of the property where there's quite a bit of honeysuckle in this area that's very invasive. So we're proposing to remove this invasive honeysuckle and restore the area with native plants. This restoration area has a total of 1,098 square feet. There was also questions last time we were before you about trees that would be removed as part of the proposed project. This site plan has been updated to clearly call out the trees that will be removed, and I'll just individually point them out. We have an arborvitae that's located in the pool area. We have a sugar maple that's located in to the north of the existing dwelling. That tree was discussed in detail at the last hearing. There's also a pitch pine and then 2 arborvitae down in this area and a holly that is in decline and not surviving very well at this point. So those are proposed for removal. We are proposing to offset these removals by planting 2 black oaks, 4 red cedars, and then 3 holly plants along this western property line. In response to comments regarding the removal of the tree, this sugar maple located to the north of the existing dwelling, the project team met on site with arborist Tim Armstrong with Bartlett Tree Experts. He prepared and we submitted his tree evaluation report for your consideration. This report evaluates in particular the sugar maple and identifies that the sugar maple is likely not a naturally occurring plant that occurred from seed in this location. It was likely planted. The tree is aging and has some structural concerns. This is all indicated in the evaluation report. And I believe Tim Armstrong is also on the meeting today, so he can address any questions you may have. Overall, we feel that the addition of the 2,400 square feet of mitigation and invasive removal area, and then also the proposed trees, will provide a great environmental improvement at this property. The client is working with Crawford Land Management on mitigation plan and invasive removal restoration plan. And we plan to submit that prior to coming back to the commission. As was mentioned at the last hearing, we are scheduled to be heard by ZBA tomorrow. And we are very hopeful that with the additional information that's been presented, the new mitigation areas, that the commission will feel that they can write a letter to the ZBA that indicates that the project could be approved with conditions. So I guess if I could take any questions, that would be wonderful.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for doing will you also provide a copy of that colorized?
Yeah, I certainly can.
That, you know, we're all, it's so much easier when your eye is drawn exactly to the right spot. Questions. I have a number of questions. Is Mr. Armstrong available? Is he here?
I am. I'm right here.
Good morning. Hello. Thank you for joining us. I do have a number of questions about the assessment of this of the sugar maple tree. Are you familiar with the various methodologies for estimating age of these trees?
Yes.
Did you do
or at least several?
Your report doesn't indicate, so I'm wondering if you did do any kind of an estimate of the age of that tree.
No, I did not. That was not part of the scope. I absolutely could. Usually what I do is I have an IML Resi PD 400, a digital resistograph that charts the resistance of a needle going through the tree, and I can very positively identify the age of a tree if so called to. I hadn't had that in the scope of this project, though.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been, other than, you know, obviously the size of the tree caught everybody's attention, and did some brief, you know, internet research and back of the envelope calculations, and found general agreement, it seemed, that for sugar maples, the estimate can be based on the DBH, which you say is 29, multiplied by a growth rate factor, which for sugar maples appears to be either 5 or 5.5, depending on who you ask, but it's one or the other. And at 5, it would indicate that tree is 145 years old. And at 5.5, it would be nearly 160 years old. So if that's the case, and maybe you can confirm or find out that that's not an accurate way. It is only one tree, but that did change kind of the calculus of what we were dealing with here, if it's that old. What do you happen to know what the average lifespan of a sugar maple is? If it's somewhere in the range of 150 years old now, what life would be left to it normally?
Well, it can be highly variable. So that's the short answer. And it's all dependent on the conditions, on its growing environment. Being that sugar maple isn't particularly common on Cape Cod, you have the assumption that you'd lower its estimated lifespan. And I could absolutely say, based on where it's at and the current structure of the tree, that it's mature and bordering on over mature, and to the point where I would expect it to begin to decline. There's even some minor dieback in the canopy already based on the vascular structure of the codominant stems, I believe.
Is that, I mean, interrupt you there. Is that the, when you say the vascular defects, is that the codominant trunks that it shows?
Yes. So those codominant stems, they disrupt the ability of water and nutrients to flow from the roots to the rest of the canopy. And particularly with sugar maple, the central leader often dies back and declines prematurely to the rest of the canopy because of the compromised vascular flow there at the codominant stem.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. You also mentioned and have a photograph of lesions that you indicate can be what you refer to as bleeding cankers. Can you explain what that is and what impact that has?
So yeah, we would need a specific lab test to confirm the diagnosis of Phytophthora bleeding canker. But Phytophthora is a soil-borne pathogen that can have a dramatic effect on the vigor and vitality of a lot of tree species, sugar maple among them. So seeing those lesions on the lower stem that appear to be weeping a dark brown substance is one of the primary indicators of Phytophthora. And again, it'll plug the vascular section of the stem and disrupt the flow of water and nutrients in that section of stem and lead to dieback and decline in trees.
Okay, didn't understand what that was. Thank you for that explanation. Well, let me then thank you for all of that. That's a lot of additional information that goes into how we analyze this. So, Tataria, what consideration was given to a site plan or a site design that would have preserved that tree? Were other options looked at?
Taria, you're on mute.
You're muted, Taria.
I was not involved with the previous discussions with the client for alternative options as far as moving the house to a location to save the tree. I think it was felt by the team that the tree was in decline as described. So no, I did not look at options where the tree was moved. The house was moved.
Okay.
To.
Okay. Because Mr. Armstrong's report indicates that if it were to be preserved, it would require a 29-foot diameter protective ring. And I just couldn't tell whether that would present a feasible or not a feasible option to move something around to accommodate that.
Yeah, and we have looked at the protective radius and the concerns that we start running up against are meeting zoning setbacks, and then also maintaining space for adequate access to the house with the driveway, and also areas for vehicles to turn around, and then also placement of the sewage disposal system.
Okay. Okay, and I don't even know if this is feasible, but has anybody considered whether, since we just heard about Johnson's Tree Farm and how they specialize in removal and replacement of large trees, whether that was considered as an option to move it?
That has not been considered. There has been some consideration as far as in the area of where the honeysuckle, the work to remove the invasives with the honeysuckle, there could be consideration for the addition of some nice cedars, native cedars in that area to help supplement the planting species in that area.
Okay. Okay. Let me open it up to other questions, as I've been hogging all the time. There's a hand up. I can't see my group here. Karen, you have a question. And you're muted, Karen. There you are.
I was out there Monday and I saw that the trees that are to be removed were marked. There's quite a bit of rhododendrons. Are those not being touched? And then where the pool and patio are going to go, and you have that one tree to be removed that's sort of in the middle of all the cement, there's quite a bit of brush, and I don't see that anybody is saying that any of that is going to be removed. And I am just curious, since it is all in the 100-foot area. The rhododendrons are not, I don't think. Well, some are, but I'm just curious what else is being removed and if there will be any mitigation to make up for all of the vegetation that's being removed.
I could respond to that. So as was mentioned, we are proposing to remove the invasive honeysuckle on the eastern side of the property. And that total area is over 1,000 square feet. And we are working with Crawford Land Management to provide you with a thorough restoration plan for that area. Which will include removal of that invasive species, but also a variety of new vegetation that will be more suitable in that location. And then also we're now proposing the 1,300 square foot buffer strip along the top of the coastal bank, which similarly will have a full mitigation planting plan provided to the commission. So in total, that's going to provide over 2,400 square feet of new native vegetation on the property. There is on the site plan, there is some areas of vegetation where the proposed house is going that, is around the concrete that will be coming out. But this substantial proposed mitigation and invasive restoration areas, we feel really offsets these removals.
All right. And where there's going to be grass around this new home, I assume it will be a Cape Cod lawn?
Yeah, we were looking at the use of, and I believe it was discussed at the last hearing, that it would be a native fescue that would be used in the area.
I just wanted to make sure, because I don't see that that's mentioned, but I could have missed it. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Bob Rawls, you have your hand up.
Just follow up on both items that were just previously mentioned. The lawn, we Cape Cod in both the NDZ as well as the outer aura. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we can put that in the order conditions if we got to that point.
Yeah, and we can also provide a note on the forthcoming plans that will be coming before you.
That would be even better, right?
Yeah.
All right, so the giant sugar maple obviously is the focus of attention here, and I'm intrigued by your discussion of additional litigation on the, I guess it's the eastern side of the property. So, what I've been thinking about is we're not supposed to design projects, but your assertion is that there's really no feasible way of relocating the property so that that tree can be saved. And we also have a report that says the tree may be, in the longer term, on the decline. So I guess the question I've always been asking myself, what is the ecological value of that tree? And so in terms of compensating for its removal, what would be adequate? And that's a hard thing for me to judge, and probably be something that would need to be addressed by someone more expert. And however, I do look forward to seeing the additional mitigation proposals, and perhaps on the balance that can balance the scales for us. I don't know. Anyway, I guess those are my two items.
All right, thank you. I have one last question, because Don is here. And can you just, so you've revised the fiber rolls. Can you just explain how that, it looks like you've included, it goes boundary to boundary and over?
Correct. Yes, it goes to,
Yeah.
we located the neighbor's fiber rolls. They're just beyond the stairway that's on their property.
Uh-huh.
The neighbor is definitely wanting us to connect to theirs. They're willing to do what Nikki suggested, which is to be added onto the existing notice of intent and then re-advertise to the abutters on the other side of the property so that it's properly advertised. And it makes a lot of sense to connect the two together so that there's no compromise in between. So we're merely showing an extension of our fiber rolls to connect to their existing fiber rolls by going 5 feet over the property line, which is roughly where the existing fiber rolls are located.
Right.
And I don't think there's a problem with us getting the neighbor to sign on because we were contacted by their liaison. His name is Jim O'Connell, not the geologist. And
Okay.
he said they're willing to sign, letter, whatever is required by the commission to make sure that there is a connection.
Okay, and so is that going to require a temporary removal of the stairway to do all that work and then
Nope.
reinstallation? No?
No, they installed them around the existing stairs. He said that it was a task for the contractor, but it was. And then Chris Petrino, one of my associates, went out with a shovel and a probe and found the actual end of the fiber rolls, and they're about somewhere between 5 and 8 feet beyond the stairway towards the Mox property.
Mm-hmm. And that gap that will be between the end of this roll and the beginning of the next roll doesn't cause any kind of a problem?
Well, if we leave a gap, it will. So we're proposing not to leave a gap. There won't be
Okay,
any
so
gap between.
So it goes all the way to meet the existing roll. Okay, that's what.
Correct. Yep.
I was having a hard time visualizing that. Okay, I got that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bob Delvecchio, you have a question.
Yes, I had a question on the proposed native mitigation in the at the top of the coastal bank. And I was wondering if there are any invasives in that area. Hello?
Yeah, so it's my understanding that most of that area is really lacking in vegetation, and that there's potentially maybe a black locust in that area. So what we're proposing to do is really come in and bring in nice natives in that area to have a healthy, thriving buffer strip.
Okay, so will the if there are any invasives, will they be removed?
Yes, any invasives in that area will be removed, and we're going to be presenting to you a robust mitigation plan that's going to identify those areas of mitigation. It will identify the black locust that will come out, and it will really provide clarity for the record on exactly what our intentions are for that area. And as I mentioned, Crawford Land Management is working on it. I just don't have the final plan yet. But our intention is to present that plan to you prior to the next hearing so that you have time to review it and comment on it. And then we can discuss it in detail. And likely Jen Crawford from Crawford Land Management will be on the line to provide you with substantial detail on what's proposed and then her methods for doing the work.
Okay, and one other question.
Nodding at that. So yes, she'll include all.
Oh, I can't see her, so.
She's got it. She says.
Yeah.
I just had one other question about the lawn again. Will it be irrigated? Did you have a plan to irrigate it at all?
There is not a plan, as far as I know, for irrigation of that lawn.
Okay. Yeah, considering the current water difficulties we have in the town, I think it would be a good idea if we, I didn't have any. That's all I had.
There will be a need for some temporary irrigation just
sure.
to get the seed to establish.
Yes, good enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Mr. Calder, where'd you go? You had, Calderaro, you had your hand up a couple different times and,
Yeah, I've had a couple come. I'm the landscape architect on the project.
okay.
With Polhema Seri de Silva. I just had a couple of answers to some of the questions that you, Madam Chair, had raised in regards to the possible moving of that sugar maple.
Yeah.
It certainly is not a candidate for moving for a number of reasons. One is its obvious size. Two is its age. And three, there's no guarantee that it's going to live.
Yeah.
So I would say that that certainly is not something we would want to take on. And then secondly, in regards to value, I believe the commission has a stipulation about replacement at a 1-to-1 DBH replacement. We would be willing to provide a combination of black oak and eastern red cedars as a part of that 1-to-1 replacement. And that would be a part of the land management and revegetation plan that Crawford would be pulling together.
So at 1-to-1 based on the DBH, the combination of the black oaks and the eastern red cedars would equal or exceed 29.
That's correct.
Okay, just writing that down. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Is anybody else, questions or comments? Nikki, as a process matter, what needs to happen next in terms of re-advertising and bringing the abutting neighbor into the process to be on the?
So I would need everything by June 29th, which is Tuesday, because our legal ad has to go in on, I think they made a mistake when they made the calendar because of the holiday. I don't think they considered that, and advertising doesn't count as a full day if there's a holiday. So I will have to look at that more closely in a few minutes.
We're shooting for the 14th for a continued hearing.
I don't think they considered 4th of July when they were making the legal ad calendar back at the, November last year or whenever they made it. So I think we have to get the legal ad in Friday. So I don't think the 14th will work out. I think it might have to be July 28th.
Okay.
Sorry, let me look at my calendar real quick.
Okay, do that. No, Terry's got his hand up, so let's see what he has while you figure out the dates. Go ahead, Terry.
That tree is not, that tree can only be 100 years old. That's still old, but that's where the blimp building was for the former Army base. And I'm just wondering if there's been any assessment, because I was looking at some other places over there a while ago on any of the existing fill that's been put in there. And then also so that's one question. Then secondly, just a general, are they taking out all the concrete? That's a specific question. I guess that's a yes or no, but the first one was a little more detailed.
Okay, Taria?
Yeah, so the concrete on the site is proposed for removal. All of the concrete that's located within your jurisdiction is proposed for removal.
Okay, how about the
about soil? Were any soil borings or soil assessments analysis?
Well, we've done soil testing for the sewage disposal system, and we know that we have suitable soils for the sewage disposal system. The way the proposed site is designed, we are not anticipating a large removal of any materials from the site. We have not yet done any kind of testing for the building foundation or anything that has resulted in any concerns for the soil on the site. But the way the site is balanced with material, we're not anticipating having to haul material off site other than the concrete removals.
Okay. Anything else, Terry?
No,
Okay, thank you.
that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Nikki, so what, so we're
Yeah,
looking.
so
at
I think I was thinking more about the July 7th meeting, work session. So they would have to have materials by us for our filing deadline on the 29th, which is Tuesday. And then they would have to re-advertise, get a new abutters list. I would re-advertise in the legal ad, and then just submit any revised documents to have the other homeowner, the other property address person on the documents for the NOI. And send revised ones to DEP. But other than that, it's, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's just basically doing the steps to file a NOI in the first place.
Okay. So the only things I have here are these process issues of re-advertising and re-notifying abutters and getting the mitigation planting plan submitted. And so
yes,
all of that seems feasible and all right. Is there a motion then to continue 32 Old Saltwater Road to July?
Janet, I had a couple of quick questions, if I might.
Yes, go ahead, Tom.
Sorry, I should have popped in earlier. I was wondering if any thought had been given to moving that aspect of the patio that's in the no disturb zone out of the no disturb zone. Excuse me.
Yeah, so the proposal in front of you, we discussed with the client, and we're now proposing the 8-foot plus buffer strip along the top of the coastal bank there, which amounts to the almost 1,364 square feet of new mitigation area. That buffer strip is going to provide a great environmental improvement as far as protecting the wetland resource areas from any activities on the site. So that's been included in the proposal before you, as well as the invasive management on the eastern side of the property.
Now, your mitigation is really first rate, but I was just asking about the patio. So in other words, I assume your comments were to say you've got lots of mitigation and so the patio doesn't matter. Or you're taking care of it.
I understand the patio. I understand the consideration about the patio. The patio will be dry laid. We're not anticipating any runoff coming off of it. And it's really, it's part of the proposal before you with the environmental benefit resulting from the mitigation.
You didn't go to law school, did you? Because your arguments are really well put together.
No, I didn't. Thank you.
Okay, Janet, I had one other question, which was in the project description section 4. We saw the reference to the issue that Attorney Ford and I were discussing related to whether or not there's any reserving of a right to build a revetment on the property. And I assume that issue is not being addressed and will not be addressed since it basically is theoretical and in the future. But I wanted to clarify whether or not that is, because I've done a lot of research on the issue, but I don't think it's worthwhile at this point, given the fact that we don't know if the revetment will ever be rebuilt.
Well, Attorney Ford is on the call, although he's grayed out. He was here a second ago. There he is. Good morning or afternoon, Mike.
Chairman, if the question is, have we withdrawn the request that the commission make a finding what is proposed is reconstruction? We have not. We set forth the arguments last time as to why we believe it is within the four corners of reconstruction, as that term is used in the regulations. And we did tell you that the history in Chatham of this has been to ignore it. And many occasions, house replaced a house that was there pre 78, then the commission has regularly found that it's reconstruction and allowed a revetment to occur. We thought we would bring it forward and put it for you, and I think you as chair indicated that you thought that was a good approach, and I agree with your statement.
Actually, I think that one of the problems that you didn't get into at all was the concurrent jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission under its bylaw and regulations. And I think with those, you come to a different conclusion than what you do under the 310 CMR analysis of the site, which you were very articulate about last time.
Yeah. I'm not asking that you make the finding under the local bylaw. I'm asking you make the finding under the state act and the state regulations. And I didn't expand it to the local bylaw. Okay. I will tell you that it seems to me that in reviewing that issue, it's one that we properly brought before the commission, and we would ask that the commission make that finding in this case. And my argument was the state act and the state regulations, because it is the state regulation that requires you to put the language in prohibiting the coastal engineering structure in the future, not the local bylaw. You would have a right, if you came forward later on, to make an argument under the local bylaw if you felt it prohibited a revetment at that time.
Well, there's also a halfway in between on all this, which is whether that I think that under the local bylaw, the commission, it's not a question of up or down. They can also want to impose conditions, mitigation, whatever that would also be appropriate. Separate and apart from what you would come to under your state rules.
You certainly have discretion under the local bylaw in areas that the state has not preempted the field with respect to their regulations, and I agree. There's a great deal of discretion under the local bylaw. I don't think the local bylaw addresses this issue specifically, but the state regulations do, which is why I thought I should lay it out in the state regulations. I would agree with the chair's assessment that this is not a precedent for all purposes for the commission. This is a fact-driven finding. You take a look at each situation and what the facts are that come before you, and you can make your finding with respect to reconstruction based on those facts. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all, and I certainly wouldn't argue with that.
Okay. Well, one other issue that's hanging out there, because I'm not going to play, hide the issues. Even under the state regulations, I mean, what you've got is an interpretation by DEP, and you certainly are correct that that's how DEP has interpreted the regulation. But I think that to be perfectly frank, I think that interpretation is in error, and that they're making a mistake that is not that much different than the kind of mistake they made in Kane versus DEP back in 2016.
Well, I appreciate your position with respect to DEP's past decisions. Obviously, I endorse the way that DEP has interpreted the application of these sections.
Right, you were very apparent about that last time, without any doubt being left.
I'd like to note that on the 14th, the commission agents all, we have our group meeting about once a month and just discuss difficult cases and things like that. And I brought this up to them. Greg Berman and the majority of the agents that were present on our call all agreed that of Attorney Ford's We
When
don't want to
the
phrase it.
CAD
His interpretation, there we go.
Yeah, of DEP.
That it's, DEP does not want to eliminate the reconstruction of a house and moving it back, and trying fiber rolls instead of keeping the house there and automatically going straight to a wetland. So that's, the majority of the agents across Cape Cod and Greg Berman have all agreed with that as well.
Well, I don't know if they heard the arguments to the contrary, but the most obvious one in my mind is that is how DEP has characterized that regulation. That is, with the idea of, saying that its purpose is to allow, people to move their dwellings back and that sort of thing. And that's why that explains the language. I think the language is better explained by saying that it's been long recognized that that the problem with coastal engineering structures is that they prevent the erosion of coastal landforms, which hurts the natural supply of sand and sediments to support in a natural manner beaches, dunes, barrier beaches, and so on. And in action, I think that's a much more reasonable interpretation of 10.30 sub 3 than the one that DEP has got. But as I'm always modest and willing to say, that plus $5 will get you a Frappuccino at Starbucks. So, but I think that there's a reasonable interpretation that is contrary to what DEP has done. And since they stepped in it once in the Kane case, I wouldn't be surprised if they're stepping in it again.
But, and not to belabor this, Madam Chairman, but
Yes,
I hear what Mr. Clark is saying, but those issues can be raised if in fact an application for a coastal engineering structure is ever brought. All we're talking about is whether or not the clients have the ability to actually make the filing, not that they're entitled to getting the wall. So you still have the same inquiries at that point that you would.
Oh, I would not disagree with you that they're entitled to make a filing.
Right. And further, any finding that this commission makes in an order of conditions is a moment in time. It's right now, and a subsequent commission could absolutely feel free to come to a contrary conclusion if they so felt. It's part of the upside and downside of the way that we do this. So.
Exactly. And speaking of moment in time, I wanted to remind the chair that we do have a zoning hearing tomorrow. We're hoping to get something by way of an indication commission with respect to this project.
Nikki, are you inclined to write a letter that we've continued to July 14th in the hopes that we are able to reach a point where we can issue an order of conditions with appropriate conditions?
I actually already sent something to Sarah that says, overall, I stated the issues that we had discussed yesterday, with the tree and all that kind of stuff. But overall, it does appear that something will be able to be approved. Okay. So I have already submitted that.
That should do it for you.
Thank you. I haven't seen it yet, but thank you.
Okay. So with all that, Bob Rawls, you get the last word on this.
Okay, the last word. I just, could you three lawyers just put into layman's terms what we're being asked to put in the order of conditions?
Yep, I can do it. I can do this. So under DEP regulations, when you have a new building, the order of conditions must say, in a new building within the 100 feet of the coastal bank, that building will not qualify for a coastal engineering structure to protect it at any point in the future. Now, the key language, of course, in all this is new building, and DEP has taken the position that reconstruction of pre-78 buildings, even in a different location, qualifies as reconstruction and is not therefore a new building subject to that requirement. So we are being asked to make a finding that this new house is a for purposes of the state regulations, a reconstruction of a pre-existing pre-1978 structure.
Okay. That's
It
what I
doesn't-
thought, but I just want to make sure because the
Just limit us.
discussion got a little arcane there.
It does, but it's because it's a really difficult area because the state regulations and the local regulations based on the bylaw are subtly different in really important ways. So it leads to a lot of confusion. And also, you know, words don't have their normal meanings. Reconstruction of existing building and new building, you would think would be easy, and it's not. So it's,
All right.
we struggle with this a lot. And that's why, because it was not well drafted, and DEP hasn't helped anything by making their rather ad hoc determination, as I would call it. Anyway, so we will pick this up again on July the 14th and try to finalize whatever it is we're willing to agree to or not at that point and take it forward from there. So is there a motion to continue to July the 14th?
We have to continue to July 14th.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote for 32 Old Salt Works. Commissioner Rawls,
Aye.
Delvecchio,
Aye.
Kitts,
Aye.
Clark,
No.
Latin,
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
I vote aye, so that's 6-1-0, continue to July the 14th.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Nikki. Getting to the end here. Let's
All right.
zip through these COCs.
I'm recommending approval on all of them. So do you want me to just open them, go through them real quick, and then we can do one big vote?
Are there any issues that we should know about on any of these?
All right, so this are request for certificate of compliance. We have 2 Sea Pine Road, Lori Fanning Smith, map 10L, parcel G2, pool installation. They're only asking for a partial for the pool. I'm guessing that the plantings, based on my site visit, the plantings haven't been in long enough, and I need to double check and make sure there was as many as were proposed. But as far as the pool goes, I'm fine with giving a partial for that. 87 Plum Dappy Lane, it's Carol Millis, map 9A, parcel D15, SE 10-3209, garage and additional mitigation and plantings. And then Stephanie Sequin wanted me to mention that it's Terry and Janet Wells are the current homeowners. Carol Millis was the homeowner before them. So we just wanted to clear that up. It's not a legal ad issue, so it should be fine. But the planting looks good. There was some Virginia creeper that's starting to enter the native planting beds. So I gave the homeowner permission to cut that back from the native area, once or twice a year as needed. There was really good survival rate of the plantings. A couple have died, which is to be expected, but they stated that they already have been speaking to McNamara, the landscaping company, and are waiting for replacement plants for the few that did die. So I recommend approval for that one as well. 138 Stage Island Road, Robert Samuelson and Kristen Campbell, map 14A-1, parcel D20. There's 2 SCs for this one, 2971 and 3120. The first one was for the dwelling, and then they did another notice of intent for a pool. Their plantings look great. As-built weren't required, so I can only surmise that it is in the correct footprint. It didn't look, there was nothing glaring about it. Apparently they had some issues that Callie had noted back before when she was still here. I have an email chain of how they figured those out, and she had signed off on everything except there was a couple, like an air conditioning unit and some small mechanical things in the buffer zone that weren't shown on the plan. But I mean, it really doesn't affect the overall project in any way. And like I said, the planting, it looks great. And they have pretty much no lawn. So I mean, overall, the property is perfect in my mind. So I recommend approval for that. And then 49 Black Duck Landing, the 49 Black Duck Landing Realty Trust, map 13B, parcel B3, SE 10-2987. It's a deck and land management, and the deck was constructed as proposed for once, because almost every single time I go out, a deck is in a different footprint slightly than it was proposed, but this one was not, and the vegetation looks great. There's tons of wildlife around, a very natural habitat. So I recommend approval for that one as well.
Okay, wow, for once we have straightforward list of,
I know, they all really did. The vegetation ones all looked great.
that's great. Does anybody have any questions for Nikki on any of these? Okay, let's do a group vote then.
Shall I move that all 5 of these certificates be approved?
Yeah. And whoops.
Clark, second.
All right, roll call vote for approving the 5 certificates of compliance that are listed here. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Delvecchio.
Aye.
Pitts.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
I vote aye. They are all issued and approved unanimously.
All right, perfect.
See how
So
fast we can do that?
We just have the filing fees to go over real quick. I can share I put them in the Dropbox, but it was kind of late yesterday. So there's that, what I recommend.
Can you zoom in a little bit? My poor eyes are struggling here.
Know if I can on Word.
Down at the bottom where the 100%. Slide that slider
yes.
over.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
No problem. So everything was pretty much the same as we discussed previously, except I spoke with Bob Duncanson, and he really thought we should keep the sliding scale for the NOI. So we'll keep that. And then for the amended order of conditions, I said whatever the previous notice of intent filing fee is what it will be to amend it, because it really does pretty much take the same amount of time to review and order and issue. And then the COC is going from $0 to $50. And if the permit has expired for 6 months or more, I'm suggesting a late fee of $100. We had originally said increase it by $50 per year, but at the last work session, we discussed a COC for a house that was built in like 1982 or something like that. And the wife, older lady trying to sell it, her husband had passed, didn't realize that it was open. And I just couldn't imagine having charged her like the $500 for something like that. So I guess I was being a little soft, but
well, we'll see how this works. And if this doesn't bring in the oldies out there and get them cleaned up, then we'll think about doing something more like that. But maybe this as a start, people will see that and say, well, yikes, I'll make sure I'll put a mark on my calendar now to make sure that this COC is applied for within 6 months of the expiration. I think that's worthwhile.
All right, so I guess we just need a vote for you all to approve any of the changes. As a courtesy, I'm going to send it.
These have been out there and advertised so that.
Yep, it's been on multiple agendas, multiple legal ads. If you vote to approve, I will, as a courtesy, send it to the selectmen just so they're aware, but they don't have approval rights over our fees.
Right.
And we would modify the regulations, and that would be that.
Okay, and just on the outside chance I don't see anybody, if anybody is on the call who wants to make a comment about it. Hearing nothing. Is there a motion to approve the revised filing fees?
Move to approve the revised filing fees.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Delvecchio.
Aye.
Kitts.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
I vote aye. Unanimously approved the new fees. That's
All
not
right,
all
so I
$100
will probably have
templates.
those made effective as soon as I can. I'm not exactly
Yeah.
sure when that will be, but I would say by September. I'll probably give myself a September 1st date
Yep.
just to.
Sounds like a good time to do that. Okay, and not unexpected bad news is that we are delayed once again on finalizing the revised restoration order for 107 Taylor's Pond. I can't go into details about what's holding up the settlement discussions because we're not in executive session. But we are continuing to await the response and the approval from the homeowner on what we think is the final version. That has been delayed for a number of reasons. So I'm gonna, at an advice of counsel, he said we should continue this, and we agreed to continue it to the work session on July 7th and hope that we're able to approve and finalize it at that point.
Move to continue to July 7th.
Clark, second on the motion to be unduly optimistic.
Yeah, right, there we go. We're hoping, well, yeah, we've missed another planting season, not for nothing, which is annoying, but since we're in litigation, there's very little we can do to move it any faster. Roll call vote for continuance to July 7th. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Delvecchio.
Aye.
Kitts.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye.
I vote aye. Keeping our fingers and toes tightly crossed and holding our breath, we'll see if we can wrap this up finally once and for all on July the 7th. And that, boys and girls, is that.
One more motion.
Go ahead. Make a
do you want to, Jenna? Do you want to talk about next?
Yeah. So next week we're not scheduled for a public hearing, but we've asked everybody to hold the date and schedule it for a brief. Won't take more than half an hour to an hour or so. A couple of things to talk about the upcoming year. We hit the new fiscal year July 1st. It runs so the following. So our 2021-22. Plans and ideas, and we have to reorganize and vote on the 30th. So it won't take long, but probably could have tacked it on to today, but didn't know that today wasn't going to be such a bad one. So appreciate everybody if taking your time on a day that we're not scheduled to meet to get this piece of work done, get our business done. So with that, and if there's anybody who wants to bring anything up on the 30th, that's the good day because it'll just be us doing a couple of administrative things. So let
Just
Nikki
email
know
me if you have anything other than that so I can put it on the agenda. The agenda has to be posted Monday morning at the latest.
Okay.
9 o'clock.
Yep.
Yes.
9 o'clock on the 30th. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote for out of here. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Delvecchio.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Kitts.
Aye.
Everybody paying attention? I switched it up. Latin.
Aye.
Sullivan. And I vote aye. We are done. Thank you all. Not great, not even